Good evening. I'd like to open the first meeting of fiscal year 2020 of the Milton Planning Board. I'm Cheryl Tagayas, the chair.
Penny Swenson, secretary.
Julia Getman, clerk.
Kathleen O'Donnell. Right. I don't know which way we're going.
William Clark, planning director.
Sorry.
And Kathleen O'Donnell.
Kathleen O'Donnell, I said that.
Remember.
All right. Our next meeting dates are August 8th and August 22nd. We have, I think, 4 sets of meeting minutes. Some edits went out. Did you folks get a chance to review the minutes and the edits?
Yes.
I can move to approve.
Okay.
Should we
We'll need
wait?
the dates.
Okay,
You have the
I
dates
got them.
in
Yeah,
front
so
of
I'll
you?
move to
Okay.
approve May 9th, May 9th, 2019, May 23rd, 2019, 6/12/2019, 6/27, 2019, as amended.
Second.
Okay.
All in
And that's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I think we are
Be already.
pretty well caught up on
Okay.
our meeting minutes.
Yes. You seem to be.
Okay, so citizens speak. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? Okay, if you would like to address the board related to one of the agenda items and you're finding that we haven't gotten to it and you need to leave, if you would raise your hand at that time. But we'd like to be able to otherwise take the comments at the time of the topic is on our agenda, okay? All right, so new business, the 131 Elliott Construction Management Plan. Well, I think we're all excited to hear that there's going to be construction at 131 Elliott Street. So welcome.
My name is Steve Connolly, the principal of 131 Elliott Street LLC, and I'm here tonight with Stephen Higgins. He's the project manager for Platinum Builders, and they're going to be the general contractor on this development. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he'll present the management plan and any questions you may have. So.
We are also excited to hear that construction is going to start over there, being the construction manager.
Yep.
I have copies of the construction management plan if you need a copy.
Got it.
I have it, thank you.
Would you please take his copy unless you have notes written in it?
No? Is it different than what was emailed?
Just a tiny, tiny bit.
Okay, then I will take your copy.
Oh, boy.
The reason it is because I asked Joe Prondek to take a look at it,
Okay,
and Joe put in a couple of comments, and Joe's comments are really extremely minor. I mean, it
Okay.
goes down to the point of
Very much.
the release
Thank you.
abatement measure.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Bill, until we all get it.
Thank you.
Actually, Steve will go
Steve will
through the
go
whole
through it,
thing,
right?
and he'll hit all the comments anyways.
Sure. Yeah, do you want to review the whole thing, or you want to hit the highlights, or?
I think let's go through the whole thing.
Okay.
You don't have to go into great detail, but just, that each topic is what.
Sure.
I think schedule is probably one, and then the major topic item.
Okay, all right. So for schedule, there's a couple of things that we really need to work on for the schedule. One is we're closing out the demo LOI, and that's, all that paperwork has been submitted, so we're expecting that to end shortly. And we are in for permit review with the commissioner, and so we're waiting on that. We also have to work with the MBTA for an access agreement with the MBTA. All that paperwork has been submitted as well, waiting on comments and review there. Once all of those parts are in place, then we can begin construction. So we are hoping to get in the ground at some point next month.
You
Schedule's
mentioned-
on the very back page of this
Okay.
document.
Yeah,
And Stephen, you mentioned MBTA. Will there be any disruption of service?
No.
No.
no, none. The only reason we need, what's called the access agreement with the MBTA's. They have what's called a zone of influence, which is anything within 30 feet of their property line. So the building at one point is in their ZOI. So they want to know pretty much everything that we're doing over there, safety plans in place and all of it. So we're working very closely with the MBTA to let them know that we're gonna, keep everything on our site and not interfere with them at all.
Okay, so then you mentioned beginning hopefully next month. You want to run through the highlights of the schedule?
Sure. So if we can get going next month, everything falls in line, we'll start with some site work, getting the rough grade into place and prepping the main building pad area for the foundations. We only have frost walls towards the front, so there's really not much digging left to do towards the Central Ave part of it. And we expect the foundation excavation activities to last about 6 weeks. And then we'll move on, hopefully with full agreements with structural steel and then framing from there on.
Okay. So then, let's go back to, I guess, page 2. Let's run through, I think, the sort of pre-construction coordination. I think it's going to be important, the contact information, et cetera.
Correct, yeah, we will ensure that the agencies of the town and the MBTA will have the names of the responsible parties and 24-hour contact number. Mainly it'll be me as a site contact. As a project manager, I'm ultimately responsible for the project. So I can be reached at any time for any reason at all. I'll also have a full-time site superintendent, so his name and phone number will be available as well. And the main contractors working on site, the excavator, will make sure that his contact person and information is available. So they're going to be doing a lot. We're working a lot with town engineering for all of the utilities coming to the site, so that's an important one for everyone to have.
So, I think you have utilities coming up a little bit later in here, so I did have a question about that for you, but in terms of the access, why don't you review that? Again, this is a little bit for the public that might be watching too, rather than, we have it in front of us, but if you don't mind just
Sure.
hitting the highlights.
No problem. Access to the building, there's actually 2 points of access for the building once it's complete. One access will be to the lower garage level from the Central Ave side, and the other access will be Elliott Street, up the hill towards the back edge of the property. And for construction purposes, that's our main egress from the site. That's where our construction entrance is gonna be, is up on Elliott Street. Couple of reasons for that. One, that's the largest area of open space that we do have on the site, which makes it easier for storage of materials and parking for on-site activities and such. 2, it's away from the MBTA, and Central Ave is a busy road. We want to stay away from the busy spots. We want to interrupt as little as possible in the town.
And that's the same area you anticipate all the contractors to be parking?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, exactly. We are going to have on-site parking only at this site. The contractors will be required to park on-site, and if they have too many vehicles and they can't fit them all on-site, then they're going to have to carpool.
Okay.
Figure it out.
How about highlighting your hours, your work hours?
Monday through Friday from 7 to 4:30. Usually probably be wrapping up around 3:30, just for the way the shifts work. And Saturdays we'll be working on an as-needed basis from 7 to 4 as well.
Oh, it says 9 to 3.
Oh, sorry, 9 to 3.
That makes a difference.
People
then.
It does, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I did change that. Gotta highlight that for myself.
9 to 3.
9 to 3 on Saturdays.
People like that better.
I think the neighbors will be happier.
Yeah, well, and the few times that we actually do work is Saturday.
I think the guys will be happier too.
Well, the guys will be very happy.
And the owner will be happy too, because it's not time and a half, right? All right, so you also here have said that your deliveries you're going to schedule outside of the normal commuting hours?
Correct. Deliveries to and from the site will be after 9 o'clock in the morning. and there'll be weekdays, non-holiday weekdays. And try to have all deliveries done before 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
No one likes unloading a truck at 2:55.
And you're familiar with the intersections, fairly narrow streets, the size of vehicles coming in. I'm sure you're going to manage so that we don't get the extra long 18-wheelers trying to come in with the steel delivery or whatever other delivery.
Yeah, in the beginning, well, the steel deliveries will be on 18-wheelers. That's just the nature of the beast. Again, we'll stage the deliveries so that one truck shows up, it's completely off the road and on site, then we work on unloading that truck. Once that truck is unloaded, they leave, then we have the other one come down the road, bring it on site. So we're not gonna stage trucks on Elliott Street, we're not gonna stage trucks on Central Ave. No staging.
And no parking of contractors
Right.
on the street, so the
Correct, no
curbside
contractor
parking
parking, no
spot.
curbside parking for contractors. All contractors will be parking on the site.
And no need to take part of the road to do your construction staging or anything like that, right?
The only time we'll be in the road is for the utilities.
Right. Because I'm sure the local businesses there will appreciate that too. Yeah. Okay.
I think that Mr. Prondak may ask that some of those cement trucks, when they start coming in for the foundation, come in on Central, because he doesn't want them tying up Elliott Street and coming in and going through a small entrance. So he may have it that they're looping through, instead of looping into the site, they're driving in one, out the other. But he'll figure that one out. He'll talk that over with the police and DPW.
Okay.
Okay?
The, I was looking, and I think it's on this page, that it would be at this initial meeting that you'll be providing the contact information, right? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The full
And
team isn't assembled yet, so
so when you have the team assembled?
when we have
you'll
the team
provide that?
assembled and we're ready to mobilize on site, that's when we'll have that pre-construction meeting.
Okay, and then again, for neighbors, if they would like that contact information, they can contact the building department
Yes.
to obtain those contact
Correct.
information, right? Okay. Okay, so the erosion control, you have Conservation Commission, that's going to dictate pretty much what you're doing there,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
I have one minor change on page 3.
Okay,
Under tree protection, Joe and I went through the plan today, and Steve, I told you 3 trees, they took down 4. Street trees, they're just small street trees out on Central Ave.
I believe the landscape plan shows them all, so.
They do, which is why I
everything-
know there's 4, because Joe
Okay.
went through it today, and he goes, wait, I told you 3, there's 4.
Okay,
So I
Okay.
just saw it here.
all right. I'll edit that.
Will those be replaced at the end?
Yes,
Yes, the landscape plan shows all the trees.
that's way back at the end.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll get hit. and-
Right, oh, I see. I just want it to happen at the end.
okay.
They have a whole bunch of their own plantings that will go in, so I'm sure they'll all go in at the same time.
Right.
Yes.
Super.
Okay, so then, you spoke about construction staging a little bit, and then utilities, again, no disruption? You want to go through that a little bit, or minimal disruption?
Yeah,
maybe we should say?
minimal disruption. To say no disruption is, I can't back that up with facts yet. There is, the drainage has to tie in at a certain point on the street. Electricity, whether it goes overhead and then underground, or if they want it to come underground, that's up to the utility, and we just have to do what they want us to do. The water mains are in the road, and we have to bring those in off of the road. The gas main is in the road, we have to bring that in off the road. So there will be disruptions in the street, but they will be minimized, and the contractors, the guys, they don't like being on roads. They really don't. It's unsafe. It's a dangerous activity, so we try to minimize any time on the roads.
So there's the traffic, but there's also the businesses that you don't want to be disrupting somebody's ability to be able to do their business, right? So I think definitely some outreach to the businesses and the residential neighbors that might be affected if
Absolutely.
something has to be
Sure.
shut down, to coordinate the best time to do that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Then noise, well, there's going to be noise with construction.
that no, construction is allowed activity, which is why we're gonna abide by the working hours, starting at 7, ending by 4, the latest, later on Saturdays. There's only so much we can do to minimize it, but it's not, there's no crazy activities planned for the site,
So
standard construction.
for example, there's no blasting, there's no pile driving,
No.
just spread footings, conventional foundation, so
Correct.
that's beneficial.
Quarrying, no rock crushing.
No, we are not gonna set up a rock crushing plant, I promise you that.
All right. Then I think probably the other things that affect quality of life in the area would be the rodent control, the dust, right, odors. So why don't we highlight that?
So,
That's page 6.
yeah, so we will have rodent management on site throughout the process. There'll be a professional rodent control contractor, and they'll take care of that end of the project. Dust, we're gonna do what we can to minimize dust, whether it's spraying some water here and there or using some calcium chips in the dirt, just to do what we can to minimize dust.
Would you say there's a stage of the construction that's of most concern to you?
The very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the excavation, once we're moving the soils around, that's when you're gonna get the most dust. Once the foundation is in and backfilled, the amount of dust is really minimized.
Okay. Questions? Kathleen?
I just was wondering, given the fact that you have a bike path right next to you, I didn't see anything mentioning in here about making sure that, you're going to make sure that that's still safe while you're doing all this construction.
The bike path's on the other side
On
of
the
the
other
trolley.
side of the
right?
trolley, I was trying to see where that, because I
Yeah.
couldn't really remember
Yeah,
where.
it's on the
Okay,
other side. Yeah.
just was concerned because that's a very popular spot.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the MBTA is interested in what the boundary at the platform for the trolley is, at the property line there, right? So,
Correct. Yeah, like I said, we're working very closely with the MBTA. I've already had a couple of meetings with them and their staff, and it was an extensive application, and we're really working through safety guidelines and really keeping everything on our site, no interruption to their services at all.
that's where the entrance off of Elliott, in terms of people getting on and off the trolley,
Right.
particularly in the fall when students are taking it.
Correct. The less
7
traffic
a.m.
on Central Ave, the better, the less coming in and out of my building on Central Ave, the
Right.
better off we are, so.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Denny?
Will the neighborhood association have a point of contact if any questions arise?
Yes.
Could be anything, it could be noise, traffic, roads.
Absolutely. Like I said, my contact information will be available.
Through Bill or?
Through the building department, through Joe.
Through the building
Joe
department, correct.
Prondak.
Yeah.
Okay, so they can look up the building department, call Joe,
Yeah.
and be in touch with you?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
People are going to be excited.
Yeah.
You missed that part of our opening.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. I was like,
All right, so,
No, I've been riding by and taking a look at the site plan, so it's good to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're excited about it. Things are
Yeah.
coming together. Finally, it's been a long run,
Finally,
but things
yeah.
have finally come together.
Oh, it was a
Pointing-
long time ago when we worked on those, for the
Yes.
permit for that.
keep pointing to the DEP placard, being like, see, it's underway. It's being permitted, I promise.
all right, then I will take a motion to approve the construction management and phasing plan.
So moved.
And second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks. See you later. Good luck.
Okay, we will now move on to our 7:15 public hearing for the continuation of the Thayer Nursery special permit renewal. This continued from June 27th.
Did we do the,
Citizen speak, we did it.
missed it?
Yeah.
Oh, nobody got up? Oh.
All right,
There's
did
a lot
we
of people in
have,
it.
wait for Bill to come back.
Apologize for my tardiness.
Right here.
Okay, thanks,
We
Bill.
approved the minutes and nobody spoke to citizen speak, so you
I got here right
Much.
before you, so.
Perfect. You're good. You're perfect.
I'm trying to manage the agenda, Denny.
Pretty good.
Yeah, you're moving.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. We're doing good tonight.
Welcome, Marion.
Evening.
How's your trip?
You didn't expect us to get to you nearly on time, did you?
No, that's good. We really did.
That month was nice, wasn't it?
It was nice, yeah, wasn't it?
Wasn't everybody so tanned and rested? I
think it's time.
Yeah, I guess.
It is nice.
You know when you have
It's
those
amazing
moments.
how the time just fills right up with everything Tonight? else.
Yep.
All right, so since our last meeting, we have been provided with a few more documents. Some, I believe, to Marion, and I believe one today arrived from counsel for Mr. Rowe and Mr. Johanning. So I think the one that arrived today, which was late afternoon, I'm not sure that all have had a chance to read and digest.
No, I just
But,
got it.
so we will likely need to take that up at our next meeting. But I think we can talk to, Marion had prepared a memo in response to some of the comments that we've had received verbally at our last two meetings. So is that something, Marion, you would like to review with us this evening?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
happy to go through at least the highlights of that
Okay,
most recent letter.
okay.
And as I pointed out in my letter, I had also previously addressed a letter to the board on June 24th. I didn't have a chance to discuss those comments with you, but
We'll
I
do
think
both
some
of
of that's
those then?
covered again.
Okay.
And then where there may still be a question related to the previous letter, I'll be happy to address that as well. And I tried to remind, because this has taken, as it always does, it's taken a few weeks, 2 months. I tried to recap where we are, that we filed the application for renewal of the special permit for their nursery for their landscaping business. Hearing opened June 12th, continued to June 27th, and this is the next hearing date that was set on the 27th. And I did provide a letter for that hearing on the 27th and some additional information, more documents, things that the board had asked for, a site, an as-built site plan, things like that. So this letter updates what I provided on the 27th. So far, I've delivered to the planning board, in addition to this letter, an as-built site plan for Thayer Nursery's landscaping permit, copies of 2017 and 18 annual reports for materials and employees, copies of the first-year operations report for the drainage system by DeSalle Burke, a current truck and vehicle list with gross vehicle weights added for each truck. And I just remind the board that Thayer Nursery is required to maintain a list of their vehicles at all times. That's not an annual report. So whenever there's any change, they have to update the list. But that report in the original special permit does not ask for gross vehicle weight. So I just wanted to show you what that information looked like if you should decide that you want it included. And then my June 24th letter. I've also provided a copy of the decision of Land Court Judge Diane Rubin, which was dated July 2nd, 2019. This is an appeal of the special permit. It has been appealed. The decision has been appealed to the Massachusetts Appeals Court. But Judge Rubin's decision is quite detailed and long, and it does address a number of the issues that were raised before this board, having to do with eligibility and sufficiency of the conditions and language in the permit. So it's helpful if you have the patience to read it. It's well-written, and I just provided it for your information, so you know that decision has come down. And then I had some additional comments. I just wanted to say, I've already talked about length of renewal term. That's up to the board. Our first request is, I'm asking that you renew the special permit. You could renew it for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. You can't renew it for longer than 5 years. I suggested that you might want to consider a 5-year renewal because they haven't had a long time to operate under their permit so far. They've had about 1.5 years. So if you, renewed it for another 5 years, you'd just be a little bit over 6 years, which if they'd been under the full 3 years for each, it would add up to the same thing. Another issue, though, that has come up since then, that's come to my attention is, and I probably should have thought about this originally, but whether you can do anything about it or not, I don't know. But it is true that a short permit makes it very difficult for a business to get a business loan. And Thayer has encountered that. If you saw fit to grant the 5-year permit, that might enable them to get a business loan. Business loans give them more flexibility, might enable them to do something about investing in their vehicles, particularly electric. I can't promise that. They might just need it to operate, but it's another consideration. And in other special permit proceedings before this board and the Board of Appeals, length of term has been a big issue for commercial entities because they all operate using loans, and the usual lenders will not consider a loan on a business that only has a 3-year operational window. So the other thing, let's see, I talked a little bit about the complaint procedure here, only to point out really that if issues come up in this hearing that we haven't heard about before, if no complaint has been filed, we haven't had a chance to address them, we don't know what they are, we don't have the details, so it's really difficult. I didn't try to to respond in detail to a couple of issues that have come up like that. But I will say that when any issue has come up in the form of a complaint to the building commissioner, he's followed the procedure, which is that he immediately notifies Thayer and tells them if he feels they have to cure or do something to fix it. And Thayer has done so, and that has been satisfactory. So, and the building commissioner testified about that the last 2 times he was before you. So I'm going to just briefly touch on the criteria for replacement of trucks and vehicles. Again, this isn't a life or death issue. If the board doesn't want to get involved with trying to change the language, so be it. We're dealing with it as it is. I think it's the building commissioner who asked for perhaps some additional language that would make it easier for him to make a judgment. He thought it might be helpful to add gross vehicle weight to that table. So you can consider doing that. It doesn't remove a condition. It adds more information in order to decide whether a truck is comparable. I've also suggested that you might want to consider doing the total of gross vehicle weights and saying you couldn't exceed that, because there are times, it hasn't happened yet, but there could be times when the applicant wants to buy 2 trucks, and one is smaller than the current one, and one is a little bit larger. And if the gross vehicle weights are not exceeded, then he could do that. But under this current permit, the way it's written, he cannot do that. Each replacement truck has to be exactly, very close at least, to the one that is already in existence. As far as electric vehicles go, electric vehicles, that's the current technology for very quiet operation of a truck or a piece of equipment. They're more expensive generally. So I talked a little bit about the fact that, you can't get business loans, it's harder to invest in these things. It would be nice to have some incentive in this permit for electric vehicles. Certainly, a longer permit term would help. I think you'd have to extend yourselves more if you were going to consider something like, well, if you'd have to talk about, you'd want to perhaps consider for the future how many electric vehicles might generate some other concession that would help the business operate. Could they have longer operations in the summer if they were using electric vehicles, because the landscaping business does most of its work in the summertime, and it does very little work in the winter. I think that was mentioned by one member of the board. But the main thing I wanted to point out to you, in addition to the fact that the loan issue makes it difficult to purchase these vehicles, is that in section 4V06, that's an existing section, and it defines what types of vehicles and trucks can be used out of hours.
Give me one moment. Bill, can you pull the special permit up, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Marianne.
And it defines them as gas or diesel. It doesn't say electric. So because of the language, you couldn't use any electric vehicles out of hours, even though they're quieter than the ones that are allowed. So I just think it's a technical correction that I'm suggesting that you should add electric to gas and diesel.
Well, it may have been that when this was drafted in 2016, electric vehicles weren't quite something that people were going to be talking about so often, so.
Yes, it could be. I don't know what the reason was. I wasn't here for that application, but. The lighting issue, again, just to bring you up to date, any lights that are not shielded, any nighttime lighting, is not being used. After the special permit was issued, the applicant determined from speaking to their lighting contractors that you could not get shields on most of the lights they already have. So what they chose to do was to not use the lights. They have had hand-manufactured shields put on 2 lights that are on the building. So if those lights are used for security reasons or whatever in the evening, maybe at Christmas time when they're selling Christmas trees or something, they're shielded. But nothing that isn't shielded is used, which means there's less lighting at night than was even anticipated by this permit. So I don't see a problem with that. The building inspector has said that it conforms to what's required. But I know that there have been concerns raised about it. So that's my answer on how the lighting is working at this point. It's an interim procedure. And again, buying more lights means that they have to make that investment, and they haven't been able to date. The issue with backup alarms is safety. The building commissioners determined the applicants can continue to use backup alarms where required for safe operation. The Thayer site is it's a very attractive open site, and it's designed so that customers and their families, including small children, can walk around the site in amongst all the plants and trees and look at different types of planting arrangements to get ideas for landscaping and for purchasing plants to bring home. And it isn't safe in some instances not to be using backup alarms because of that, because there could be younger children or even adults walking around, and they need to be able to know that something's about to back up near a road or a driveway that they're crossing. So the special permit does allow the use of backup alarms if necessary. Verification information on rubber matting, sound suppressing material for fencing, that's been submitted to the satisfaction of the building commissioner, and that consisted of pretty detailed information, manufacturer specifications, and they have been according to the actual language that's in the permit. You did vote, I think last fall, to allow a little bit more flexibility on the rubber matting, as long as it was better in terms of the specifications than what was called for in the permit. The replacement of dead vegetation, Thayer has been replacing dead trees and bushes, but they can only replace them during the growing season. So if you take a picture in March, it's not the growing season yet, and there's likely to be something that's dead. There may be several trees that are dead, and there were. Those have all been replaced. Everything that was not in good condition has been replaced. And if some of it fails again, maybe it won't after such a wet summer, but if it does, it will be replaced. But you can't plant these things at any time of the year. You have to plant them at the time of year when they're going to grow well. So, as far as the application, fencing material and placement was reviewed. It was found compliant by the building commissioner. There was a private lawsuit about drainage. That was settled by the insurance firm for Thayer, and there was a financial settlement, and the terms of the special permit became the conditions of the settlement. The deadlines, there were deadlines established in the settlement for completion of the drainage work. I think it was by December of that first year, December 2016. But in November, the town said that the street could not be opened to complete the drain and connect it with the town's drain. That made it impossible to complete that part of the drainage. The rest of the drainage was in. And water was draining the way it is today, but the connection was not made. So that was one of the reasons that arbitration, which is allowed for in the settlement, was entered into. It took many months. It cost everybody quite a bit of money. And in the end, the result of the arbitration was that the arbitrator said that they had to comply with the conditions of their permit. By that time, it was August. They were about ready to get an occupancy permit. And that was not any different from what they had to do anyway. So I took issue a little bit at the statement that this was necessary in order to push Thayer to fulfill the conditions of their permit. What pushed Thayer to fulfill the conditions of the permit was the need for an occupancy permit. They couldn't occupy under this permit until they had completed everything. The wood business is controlled by various conditions, but was interesting to me is that the volume of wood is much lower than what the permit allows. It's gone down, and that's partly because the wood industry has changed. A lot of people are selling this type of dried wood, and Thayer just isn't selling as much as they used to. So it's certainly not gotten worse or gotten more noisy or anything like that. The engineering reports on the drainage system have been supplied according to what's required in the special permit. The special permit requires a report from an engineer on the operation of the drainage system. It doesn't require an as-built plan. It requires that the engineer come and look at the operation and see if it's working the way it's supposed to. And at the same time that he did that, he looked at various aspects of the drainage. Was it vegetated? Was there silt building up and that kind of thing? And he has a description of that in his report. He came twice, and the second time was actually not that long ago. It was in May, and he gave a positive report about the way it was operating. There also have been some significant rainstorms this summer. Thayer's been taking pictures. The water is going right down in the direction it's supposed to. It has never overflowed, even in some of these really extreme storms that we've had recently. This drainage system is accepting drainage from the entire upper area of this hill. So this one business is providing a control and a drainage channel for not only water that's just hitting their property and flowing off it, but water that's coming down the hill. There was a question about the allowed hours of operation. I think it had to do with noise. There was a lot of equipment noise on Sunday. So with my memo, I gave you the table from the special permit that shows exactly what the hours are. And I'm also reporting now, just so that you understand it, the landscaping business does not operate on Sunday. There are no employees who work on Sunday. The nursery business does operate on Sunday under more limited hours. Sales is in full, people can come to the sales office and make arrangements for jobs and that kind of thing. So I don't know the specifics of what the noise complaint was, but I would speculate that this would have been nursery equipment because there is no landscaping equipment that operates then. And if it seemed to be noisier that particular Sunday, without knowing more, we couldn't really figure out, what was going on. But we did have a couple of weeks when it was extremely rainy. So it's possible that no work could be done loading and moving materials around during the rest of the week. Maybe there was more activity on Sunday than there usually is for the nursery. I don't know that there was a violation there. But we took the complaint in good faith, and, certainly I've asked them to, look at that carefully. The loading of plant and nursery materials not sold as part of the landscaping business is allowed on Sunday.
Marion, you said they took a look at the complaint. There was no formal complaint
No,
filed, right?
I mean, after the meeting, I went back and said, do you know what this is
Comment.
about? Yeah, and we're not
Okay.
sure.
But I noticed in some of the materials that you gave us that they can have operations from 10 to 3, I think it was. So they can have vehicles moving,
Nursery vehicles.
nursery vehicles, okay.
So,
So that's allowed in the special permit.
yeah, and one way that I can tell you absolutely for sure that they weren't landscaping vehicles is that they don't pay their landscaping employees to work on Sunday, and they don't work on Sunday. That's just the way the business is set up. They do work rather intensively during this period of time, the rest of the days of the week, but they can't open the premises and move equipment out until the hours that they're allowed to do that during the week for landscaping.
Could it have been a customer or something? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that, sometimes the noise level may increase if you're trying to do more because you haven't been able to move or load anything for the rest of the week. And there was one week when it rained every single day, so, but I'm not sure whether it was that week. So, just summing up, We're making several requests of the planning board. One is that they consider, first of all, the testimony at the hearing from the building commissioner especially is that their nursery is in material compliance with their special permit. And that's what's required for you to consider approving a renewal of this permit.
He actually said strict compliance when I asked him.
Who did?
Mr. Prondak.
Well, that's even better. And you're right, he did say that. But I'm just talking about what the permit says, the special
Right.
permit says.
You're correct. The special permit said material compliance.
His
for
testimony
renewal.
was that they're in strict compliance. And he's very familiar with the conditions of the permit, and he's spent a lot of time visiting the site. He has visited the site numerous times, also with the town administrator. You know, I've been there for some of the site walks, but not all of them. And every detail is looked at. And if there's a detail that needs to be addressed, it's raised at the time, and there's a follow-up. I've also asked that you determine the length of the renewal term if you're going to renew. And in a previous letter, I talked about a suggestion that you insert a January 1st deadline for the annual reports. It seems there's no specific date stated here for the annual reports. And January 1st makes sense because it's the middle of the winter. The landscaping business is quiet. They will have had time to sum up all of their activity for the prior year. And then you can, they get ready for the next year based on what they find. And they keep records, they keep ongoing records. But the annual report is a summary. It's available to you and the public to see what's happening, what the volume of business is, whether anything specific has changed. So I would ask you to make that change, or not change, but to add that requirement that the annual reports be submitted by January 1st of each year. I mentioned the electric vehicle language in section 4, Roman numeral 4, number 406. And then there was discussion in a prior hearing. Mr. Prondak mentioned that this issue of there's one truck that's a Sprinter van that Josh Oldfield uses also as his personal vehicle. It has to be parked on site because it's a truck and it's used for landscaping. He wanted to know whether you would consider allowing him to park it in the driveway at 24 Forest Street, which is part of the landscaping permit, but it's not the parking area. That's just something for you to consider. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But it has come up as, he's asked Mr. Prondak has said, no, I can't do that, that has to be changed. If it's going to be changed, it has to be changed in the special permit. So that's a quick summary of what I had in my memo and in my letter. In my previous letter, I think it covers everything, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll just double check to make sure.
So, Marion, before, while you're looking through that, is there anyone here who has an interest in providing comments on this application for the renewal of the special permit for Thayer Nursery who hasn't yet, I'll come back to you, but who hasn't yet provided any comments to the board? Yes. Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Cindy Christensen. I live at 59 Colomer Street. I've been friends with Phil and John since about 2013, maybe 2014. My family and I have been to their home for outdoor activities many times over the years, both before and after the special permit went into effect and the standards for it have been attempted. I live in a residential C zone, and I can tell you that the noise at Phil and John's home is much louder than in my neighborhood, where we have 8 or more homes to their 1 in a residential A location. 8 or more homes to 1, yet my neighborhood noise is noticeably less than this zone's A, and I'm not talking about airplane noise at this point. The noise there, I believe, originates from the abutting landscape business that the special permit enables to be there. When I've been at their home, I hear the bobcats, the trucks, the sound of dumping, shoveling, piling landscape material. I've been there on weekdays, evenings, and weekends I do not believe that the noise levels have changed, even with the specifications of the special permit that others and I voted on as town meeting members several years ago, and I wonder why. I think that if you visited at the times that I did, or attend a party or a barbecue there, you would find the noise to be unacceptable for your residential home. I was surprised to hear about the Sunday hours, because many of the times I've been there have been on Sundays, and the noise is quite dramatic on that day, particularly hearing that employees are not working at that time. But I'd like to focus on two things that I'd like to ask this board to consider doing. The first is the fence that is supposed to mitigate the noise. A lot of our barbecues and birthday parties, we've talked about this fence. I don't think it's working. I've noticed no change in the noise when I'm there, not a bit. I think my daughter-in-law says the same thing, and so do my two sons. I think it would be a positive step to have the fence material tested to ensure that it's up to the standards required. Perhaps the material is faulty, but something isn't right about the fence if it's meant to mitigate noise. I'm sure the fence was a substantial expense with the good intention to reduce the noise burden of direct abutters, but it's not doing its job. Could a sample of the fence material be evaluated, or someone go out there and make sure that it's been installed properly, because it's not doing what it was intended to do? My second suggestion is perhaps the most important one. I ask that this board focus on strict compliance, as is called for in the special permit that town meeting members approved. Strict compliance means strict enforcement, and I don't think that we've seen that yet. And I think that the abutters are the people who are the experts in determining that. They're the ones who live with this. I think that if any of you went and spent some time at one of Phil and John's parties, barbecues, get-togethers, you would find it unacceptable for your own quality of living, particularly in a residential A zone. I'm just wondering, what if strict enforcement actually worked? What if strict enforcement was an end to these hearings, an end to the feuds, the problems, the complaints? I was reminded of a quote attributed to Einstein that says, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results." I think it's time to try strict enforcement, and that includes listening to the voice of the abutters. I also want to say that I know Phil and John to be smart, loving, compassionate individuals. They have rights, and they deserve to have their property and quality of life protected by the town. I do not know the old Phils, but my guess is that they too are smart, loving, and compassionate individuals. I believe that it's time for the town to step up to the plate, and to do that means strict enforcement. I encourage you to act in ways that are consistent with the special permit. Please focus on strict compliance. Town meeting did its job. You guys have done your job. It's time for the town to fulfill the requirements agreed to by town meeting and this board without variation or personal interpretation or desires. Adherence to the special permit is fair to all parties, the abutters, and to the landscape business, which we're talking about here. We're not talking, my understanding is we're not talking about the nursery. I think everybody's okay with the nursery. We're talking about the landscape business. It's fair, the special permit is fair and was agreed upon by town meeting. This is what I think any of us would expect if we were in the situation that the abutters to their landscaping business were dealing with on a daily basis. That's it. Thank you.
Just before you go, town meeting approved the zoning amendment, but the planning board issued the special permit, so just for clarity.
Okay,
And-
so my words were
Just-
incorrect, but my
I understand
meaning is the
sentiment,
same.
right. And I just, if you will, what is your understanding of what has not been, we've heard testimony from the building commissioner that as of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, that Thayer Nursery is in strict compliance.
Are you
and that
Thayer Landscaping or Thayer Nursery?
well, the application is under Thayer Nursery doing the landscaping business. I mean, the exact language that he used, I'd have to go back and double check. But that the landscaping business, if you will, is in strict compliance with the special permit, and that he has enforced the special permit according to the terms, to the very best that he can, according to the terms. He doesn't go beyond the terms. That's his testimony. So I want to understand if what you're referring to when you say the town needs to step up, what do you think has not been enforced properly?
I can only speak to what I've experienced, the times that I've been there over the last several years, and it's noisy. I hear the bobcats. I've heard the bobcats on Sundays. I hear the piling and dumping of material. I've heard that on evenings. I don't know. A lot of this, I've talked to some of the other neighbors in the neighborhood. Some of them say the same thing. It's, I think it's up to the town to make unannounced visits, to listen closely to what people are saying. I know, I feel like some of these abutters are painted in a picture that is convenient for the story that some want to tell. I disagree with that. I know Phil and John very well, and I think that they are reasonable, compassionate people who want to be able to coexist with the business that abuts their neighborhood, but they have a landscaping business now that abuts their neighborhood. I think that if the special permit, the standards in the special permit were followed, that all of these hearings, the complaints would end. I encourage you guys to go and visit Phil and John's backyard.
So-
And you'll hear for yourself.
So let's be clear, the special permit does not allow the landscaping business to operate on Sundays. So if there are things that are generating noise on Sundays from the nursery business, then that's something that we can ask the applicant to explain a bit in terms of what their operations are on Sundays. But just to be clear, the landscaping business per the special permit is not allowed to operate on property. And as Mary McKettrick has,
I was really surprised to hear that while I was sitting here, because that has not, I mean, it's not like I, go over there to see, who's doing what, but it's very noisy. I mean, it's noisy enough that it, diminishes the fun of having an outdoor event in their neighborhood. I also think the fence is important. If I had paid for that fence and it's doing as little or nothing, I can't tell that it's done anything. I think that it needs to be tested. Somebody else needs to look at it. It's not doing what the intent of that fence was meant to be.
do you have, anybody else have questions?
I just had, so I just wanted to do a 23B3 disclosure. So I belong to an association that Cindy Christensen belongs to as well, namely the Milton Neighborhood Coalition. And just for transparency's sake and pursuant to guidance from the State Ethics Commissions, I feel that I can be fair and objective in this and carry out my official duties as a planning board member on this topic, even though I'm friendly.
Let me just say, I think you're okay because I'm no longer a part of that association. But
But I
thank you
just-
for,
I like to be transparent and,
that's
pursuant
fine.
to the same guidance, I just
Yes.
want
No, I
all of the
appreciate
planning board
that.
members to do that as well. So, thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Cindy? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, before Mr. Johanning, is there anyone else here who hasn't spoken to the board, who would like to come speak to the board? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Johanning? And if I may ask that you try and limit your comments to things that you haven't already expressed to us, because we've duly taken note of those things, and we will discuss them when we get to our discussion portion, okay?
Well, I don't remember exactly what I've said before, so maybe you can just cut me off. The thing is, I still don't believe I've been heard, actually. Mr. Prondak made certain decisions. For instance, he decided that if they couldn't achieve the objectives of the special permit with respect to lighting, that they would just turn them off. That's not an option in the special permit. They were supposed to be shielded. Now, if you look at the special permit on page 22, It says, "There shall be no material changes to operations, site features, or addition of site features without amendment of the special permit." That means that any kind of decision like that would have to come back to the board for an amendment of the special permit. Mr. Prondak never did that. So he made various decisions, like he said, backup alarms, even though they can be silenced by law, he wasn't gonna make them do that. Well, honestly, he didn't have the right to make that decision. That's another thing that would have to come back to the board. We sat here for an entire year coming up with requirements of the special permit. And Mr. Prondak comes over and says, well, backup alarms add to safety. We were here with the Oldfields, with John and me, with the entire board, and a decision was made. There will be, backup alarms will be silenced if permitted by law. Mr. Prondak wrote a note to me saying it is permitted by law, but I won't allow it. He didn't have the right to do that. So, the other thing that I talked about, I read the requirements for the fence. The fence had to be a steel fence. The fence is not a steel fence. That's another requirement of the special permit that has, Mr. Prondak said it was okay. Now, you said Mr. Prondak issued an occupancy permit. He did, but in another email that I read to you, not all dump trucks were lined in rubber. Only 2 were. He said that in his email to me. So he knew that there was not strict compliance when he issued the occupancy permit. He knew that the fence did not comply. He knew that the lighting did not comply. He knew that the linings in the trucks did not comply. So, if he issued the occupancy permit, it was surely something he should not have done. I also want to say that when Marion says that, that Thayer went ahead and did all these changes, made all these changes so that they could get the occupancy permit, to me, there was never a disruption of the operation. The operation continued on the site with or without the occupancy permit. There was absolutely no effort, in my opinion, on his part to stop the operation up until the time the occupancy permit was issued.
On the
So-
landscaping business component of it, you're
On the
referring to?
That's all that we're talking about here, in my opinion. Finally, I guess I would say, it makes no sense, and I said this to Brian Furs, it makes no sense to say these bobcats are landscaping and these bobcats are nursery. What sense does that make in terms of enforcement? What do I know about which bobcat it is? How do I know that it's only landscaping bobcats that are operating on Sunday? When I hear the bobcats, I hear the bobcats. I don't know which one it is. If you want me to get a drone so I can identify it and take a picture of it, I guess I can do that. But I think that's an enforcement routine that has to be done by the town, not by me. But I think it all starts back with the permit itself, where, we either have bobcats or we don't. Finally, I guess, in response to what Cindy has said, the operations of the nursery or the landscaping business must be compatible with the residential character of the neighborhood. It doesn't really matter if the fence is what was specified or it isn't. What matters is whether it works and protects the neighbors from noise. And she said, and I agree 100%, and I believe it myself, that the noise that we live with on a regular basis is not appropriate in our neighborhood. And I would ask each and every one of you to come on over on a Sunday afternoon. Hopefully the bobcats are working and you can hear them. I've asked neighbors, I've asked anybody who wants to come over and become familiar with my life to come over. Never saw a person yet. There have been sidewalks in the past, but I don't believe that anyone has become familiar with my side of the fence, with my condition of living. Cindy knows, her family knows, because they've been at my house. Other people have opinions, have thoughts, but they don't know what it's like. She says that she lives in a Residence C area of town. I live in a Residence A. She says that the noise is worse in my neighborhood than it is in hers, far worse. That's the truth. So what we have to say is the fence, with it or without it, the noise is intolerable. And it is not consistent with the residential character of the neighborhood, particularly with the hours of business that exist. And so I would say that if you cannot make this landscape use compatible with the neighborhood, then you cannot issue a special permit. It's impossible under the laws of the Commonwealth and under the bylaws of the town. So it's incumbent upon the nursery and the board to find a solution to protect me and my neighbors from noise. If it means no bobcats on Sunday, it means no bobcats on Sunday. If it means hours of operation need to be changed, then it means that hours of operation need to be changed. But we must be sure that this landscape business use is compatible, consistent with a Residence A neighborhood. And I would say it is not. That's the job of the board. Have to do something about the noise. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Johanning, board members? Denny?
The materials that you gave last week, I'm not sure I received them. I was wondering if you could describe what they were, because I called in the last meeting.
I gave them to you, yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay. 'Cause
So I
just-
apologize for
No,
that.
no, I was
didn't
out of
have a
town.
chance until tonight to deliver them, but.
Oh, no, don't be silly. I just want to be sure I got them before we made a ruling. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the idea of longer hours, but with electric vehicles as an incentive, so that the electric vehicles would be quiet.
I was appalled by what was discussed before Cindy sat down, because, it would be one thing if there was a commitment that the proceeds of the loan would be used to buy electric vehicles. But to talk about how difficult it is to get a loan under these circumstances without any kind of commitment about how that will alleviate the problems of abutters, I'd say, sounds like a business problem, not a problem of the board.
But I do think for long-term planning, because that's what our brain is, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is planning long-term, providing some sort of an incentive to use quieter equipment that would be quieter in the neighborhood is a good concept.
Well, as long as there are no backup alarms. I mean, an electric vehicle or a diesel or a gasoline with a backup alarm is still incredibly annoying, even though backup alarms really aren't permitted under this permit. That was a change Mr. Prondak made unilaterally after we sat here for a year to iron out the terms.
Did you have any thoughts about allowing Mr. Oldfield to park in his own driveway?
Absolutely not.
You don't have a problem with that?
No, I absolutely do not agree with that.
Oh.
There's a parking plan.
Okay.
I have observed, I go to work up Forest Street every single day. And I won't say that every single day does he park in that driveway, but the zoning bylaws for Residence A say that commercial vehicles, must be garaged. They must be garaged so that you can't see them. It's like having a billboard on Forest Street. That's not appropriate. There's a signage plan, and the signage plan has to be observed. To put a commercial vehicle that is like a billboard in your driveway is not observing the parking plan or the signage plan. So I would say absolutely not. I mean, I'm sure Josh can walk, 30 feet to get in his vehicle. It's not a terrible burden. And with respect to the parking plan, they call it the weenie wagon, the hot dog truck. has been parked right off Forest Street since the permit was issued. You can see it from Forest Street. I just don't understand how that's in compliance with the parking plan. You can drive by tomorrow and you can see it. It seems to me that something as, I'll say, ugly as that needs to be parked in the proper place. It needs to be parked in accordance with the parking plan, not off of Forest Street where everybody can see it. And why isn't it parked in compliance with the parking plan anyway?
Okay, any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johannes. Is there anyone else who would like, yes, Mr. Rowe? And I'll ask the same of you, Mr. Rowe, to please try and limit your comments to things that you haven't provided us your testimony on at prior meetings.
Sure. I think I am going to touch on a couple of things that I talked about last time, simply because there were members that were on the phone that I don't know what they heard and what they didn't.
I heard everything on the phone, thank you.
And who are you?
Jenny, did you hear everything on the phone?
Yeah, I was.
And who are you?
I'm Kathleen O'Donnell.
Ah, you're the one that asked about, and I don't mean to be smart, but
And I'm going to ask you not to be smart as chair.
I don't mean to be smart,
I'd
but
ask you
all
to
I'm
stick to the
saying.
testimony, please.
Okay. But my expectation is this board understands what's in the special permit and what is in the bylaw amendment. And I was under the impression in the last meeting that the board was not familiar with the special permit. And that's all my concern is.
I have read the special permit several times.
Okay.
We all didn't have it with us at the prior meeting. We all were
Right,
supplied it
because-
some time
Because
ago
my
now.
attorney had to point out a number of areas in the special permit that you folks asked where it said this. This is why I'm bringing this up.
I did not have a copy of it
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
where I was
didn't-
calling from
Okay,
at 1 o'clock in the morning.
And I think I said at that meeting, I asked that it be distributed. It was.
Yes.
And I asked all members to familiarize themselves with it because
And
not
we
all
have.
members were on the board at the time it was written. And I'm hoping that all members have had the chance to do that. So that, I think you don't have to go over the sections that you and the attorney went over last time. I certainly
you
have
guys have it
reviewed
covered?
I certainly reviewed them myself, and we
Very
will
good.
discuss it when we get to our deliberations. But if you want to highlight something without
no,
taking
no.
too much time,
I
I'm
just-
just
no,
trying to
no.
manage our agenda to be efficient.
no, I just was concerned the last meeting that it appeared to me that not everybody was familiar with the special permit, and they weren't familiar with the bylaw. And so I just, now you've clarified that you're all crystal clear on this, right? Mm-hmm. Perfect. I just want to make sure everyone's making decisions with the facts.
We,
All right.
we will take as much time as is necessary to hear the concerns and for all members to get their questions answered and to deliberate. So we're happy to, if there's something that you want to make sure that we focus on, you're welcome to point it out briefly though, okay?
Sure. There's a theme here, compliance and enforcement. I don't know which comes first, chicken or the egg. Saturday, June 29, there was power washing their vehicles in the yard behind my home. Power washing is not allowed on the weekend.
And
July 3rd, amplified music was played. Amplified music is never allowed. So, I think that this board really needs to come up with somehow how, there has to be a mechanism to report violations on the weekend and have them dealt with on the weekend. Mr. Prondak testified here at the last meeting, and he said, when there are violations, what do you want me to do, shut them down? Why not?
That's
You
not
know-
what, the special permit has provisions for violations, and I imagine you're familiar with those, right? So your
And there's
first-
no provision for any enforcement during, when the building commissioner is not in office.
Sure, your first line is to actually go to the applicant. So did you reach out to the applicant on these couple of items that you identified?
No, and I'm
with?
never going to do that. And I'll tell you that right now, so you probably should strike it. I'm not going to Thayer
We're not-
Nursery and complain.
But
As
This
a
is
matter of
written
fact,
for all
as-
neighbors and not just you, so we'll
Okay.
keep it in, but
But it's not a requirement, is it?
there are complaints, and.
It's not a requirement,
It's
Cheryl.
not a requirement that you do that, no, but it says that,
I will always go to the building commissioner, and that's the proper place to go.
that's the second line that says in the special permit, as you know. But if your concern is mainly on that there's no one to contact on the weekends on the town side, is that your primary concern?
Well, the concern is that Thayer Nursery has a history of noncompliance. They're in the process of asking for the special permit to be renewed, and they continue to violate the terms of the permit. You know, these are two violations since the last hearing. So I'm just trying to make a point that you know that Thayer Nursery has had a history of noncompliance, a history that goes back to 2003, long before I showed up. And so I think we need to take into consideration the history. And although Prondex says that they are in strict compliance, I disagree with that. Just these two, well, I also want to talk about wood distribution, which I touched on the last meeting. Firewood distribution, the neighborhood cannot support tractor-trailer trucks delivering firewood. 1,000 cords of firewood a year that get hauled into Thayer during the season and then hauled out on diesel vehicles. I don't think that firewood distribution is in harmony with the neighborhood. And I believe that all other landscapers in Milton have moved their firewood distribution business off-site.
Okay, you did talk to us about this previously?
Yep,
Okay.
you remember?
Happy to- I do, and I'm asking you to be succinct.
Okay. And the other thing is, the Sunday machinery. I really think there should be a moratorium on Sunday machinery. And Alex Whiteside talked about this extensively when the last permit was issued, that whatever is issued here, it applies to both nursery and landscaping operations. You cannot split them out. I don't know what happened when the permit was built, but, or that this was not specified, but I'm asking the board to think about that. How on earth can the town enforce anything when we have them split up? You really, I'm asking you to make this permit. Well, I'm asking you not to issue it, but I know that that's not going to happen. So if the permit's issued, I'm asking you to ensure that everything is applied as one. So you can't split nursery and landscaping. And you have the right to do that. The applicant could eliminate landscaping, altogether and just run a nursery by right. But they've decided that they want to run a landscaping business there, and because of that, there has to be some compromise. And I see no reason why we can't, in this permit, say that it applies to all. And I think that it's not unreasonable to ask that there's no machinery at all on Sundays. And I think that what you really need to look at is the language in the permit and make sure that it applies to both. You can't split it up. that and one of the concerns, Ms. O'Donnell? Of yours on the last call was to change the language in the permit to make it easier for the town to enforce. And I think that this is a good starting place for you to do that. I wanted to say something else and I've forgotten. Electric vehicles. I have no objection to them buying electric vehicles to replace their current vehicles. I have no, if you want to concessions to extend the hours of operation if they have electric vehicles, and I think what it means is all vehicles are electric. And there will be no concessions until that happens. Mahoney's in Winchester has all electric on their site on 3A in Winchester. All of the vehicles on that site are electric. That goes back years. So I guess I don't understand. If you're asking us if we're okay if they have electric vehicles, sure, I don't care if they have electric vehicles. But I'm not in favor of any concessions if they have electric vehicles, unless all vehicles are electric. And I think that probably would help the entire neighborhood if all vehicles were electric. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the board on this application? Okay, seeing none. Town Council, Kevin Freitag is here. Just, if you don't mind, Kevin, coming. Kevin and I spoke briefly, and I don't know if he's ready to comment on this, but in re-reviewing the special permit, on page 22 is where the reference to strict compliance. And I'll just read, the planning board determines that these standards, including the specific standards and requirements imposed by the zoning in subsection N, will be met if there is strict compliance with the terms, conditions, limitations, and requirements specified in the special permit. There shall be no material changes to operations, site features, or addition of site features without amendment of the special permit. So then later, on page 25, under section 11, term renewal and revocation and amendment, it says this special permit may be renewed for one or more additional terms of up to 5 years with such additional terms and conditions as may be appropriate, provided that there has been material compliance with the special permit in the prior term. And then under revocation by the Board of Appeals, it says upon application by the building commissioner during the term or extended term of the special permit may be revoked by the Board of Appeals after hearing in the event of a material violation which has not been promptly cured following notice from the building commissioner as provided in subsection N of the zoning bylaw. Upon notice of violation, applicants in good faith shall commence a cure and diligently pursue completion of the cure. So we have one place it says strict compliance, Kevin, and two places it says material compliance. So can you help us out here?
I guess the answer is I can. I don't know that I can do it right now. I
Okay.
think you and I discussed that a little bit earlier, and
This is just a term and a topic that has been brought up at every one of our meetings about this, so it is something I felt it was important to ask town council about. So if anybody else has a question about it for Kevin to think about between now
Well,
and
I
the
think
next
it's
meeting.
two separate issues, is that the language in 22 is dealing with the issuance of the actual permit, this permit, special permit, and that the board has made determination that the terms and conditions that have been put in that special permit If they're followed, is that we believe that we've addressed the issues that have been raised by the zoning bylaw, by the people at the hearings, and all the questions that have come up. So my reading of it is that it affects the determination of whether or not you're going to issue this actual special permit. Then, the later pages in my reading go on to talk about what would happen next after you've issued this permit. So we've determined that this, the strict compliance with these provisions has made this permit, these conditions are included in this permit. Going forward, we would be looking to see if there's going to be a renewal of some sort, that there would be material compliance. I think it's two different timeframes. So that we've determined that this permit as written is a reflection of the strict compliance with the zoning bylaw and everything else in the town, and that going forward, now we've issued this permit in strict compliance, that going forward, we're going to be looking at material compliance, which is going to be saying, as long as they're in material compliance with the provisions of the permit, that we could continue to renew it or something.
So following along that line of thinking, but it says here, if there is strict compliance with the terms. So what we're saying then is that Mr. Prondak has determined that he believes that as built, there is strict compliance.
He issued a certificate of occupancy.
So you're saying that by that issuance of the certificate of occupancy, he said
He's made the
that the terms
determination,
have...
yes.
Okay.
That's the way I read
Those were
that.
his words when he came in and
Yeah,
talked to us.
that he had to be determined whether he is issuing the certificate of occupancy based on this permit, that there was strict compliance, and he did. And he said he did. And then, I can, just defer to you, you're the town council, not me. But then going forward, you're going to be looking at material compliance. It's a different standard. That's for the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for this special permit, was what he was looking at. And that going forward, you're going to be looking for material compliance, because, if you say, okay, fine, you're not going to turn the lights on at all, you could say, okay, fine, it's not a material decision to say, okay, fine, you couldn't shield them, so you took the bulbs out and you don't use the lights. Well, I think that's okay. That's going along with the spirit of the permit.
So who should make that determination?
That would be the building
The
inspector.
building inspector. Okay, so is there a legal definition of strict versus material?
We could all make a lot of money as lawyers on that particular issue, any number of times.
I'm hesitant to actually take a position on it right now. I'd like to take a look at the special permit again and consider this specific issue and then get back to the board.
Okay. So it seems to me that that's going to be an important consideration for us as we try to address concerns that have been raised about what does compliance mean. So, thank you, Kevin. You'll get back to us.
Were you here all night just for that one question? I hope not.
No, he's not.
Not a good
Just
July
for that.
night for.
All right, so I think we've, yes, Mr. Johann? I was just going to summarize.
So as to save time, I put together a letter of, the way John and I feel about this and what we think should happen going forward. And I wonder if I could just distribute the letter?
Sure.
Okay.
To Bill?
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a copy for everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will read that as well as the letter from your attorney, Mr. Dunn, before our next meeting, okay? Rather than
great.
try and read it now. So I'd like to say that we have the application, we've heard from the applicant, we've heard comments from the public, we've heard a response from the applicant on the comments. We do have some material to read, so I'd like to suggest that we keep the public hearing open to take into consideration the material that we haven't had a chance to read. I see in Marion's face a sigh.
It's okay, whatever the board needs to do.
I think it is an important renewal application, and I think we need to be diligent with reviewing all the material. I would like to say a couple of things, though. The the town did pass the zoning that allows for nursery businesses in residential neighborhoods by a vote of town meeting. The applicant submitted an application for a special permit pursuant to that zoning. This board spent extensive time reviewing the application, taking testimony, and seeking additional information at the time that the special permit decision was granted. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that background, that this is now a renewal. The zoning itself was challenged by Mr. Rowe and Mr. Johanning. The land court did uphold the zoning and also upheld it on appeal. Marion referenced the special permit also had been challenged by Mr. Rowe and Mr. Johanning, and land court came down with a decision on July 2nd, which we all have a copy of, upholding the planning board's issuance of the special permit. And the judge went through a lot of detail in explaining her reasons for doing that. And we can, as we go through and look at the requirements of the special permit, what we're looking at is, are they in material compliance with the special permit, so that such that they could be granted the renewal under that special permit that was issued. So one thing that's been talked about quite a bit is the storm drainage system. The system was designed by a professional civil engineer. It was reviewed by the town engineer. It was installed and certified by the design engineer to have been installed in accordance with his plans. There's been subsequent inspection of that system, and that it has been reported to be operating sufficiently and as designed. That is both by the design engineer and agreed to by the town engineer. There's continued reporting required. One other report, that's an interim stormwater report that's due. We need to, I think, provide a date for which we'd like to see that. That goes to the planning board and the town engineer. And then following that, every year, a report is required to be submitted to the town engineer. There's an entire maintenance plan. It's called the Stormwater Operation and Maintenance Plan. It's Exhibit E to the special permit, and it lays out the requirements in more detail. The special permit, if there is some believe that there's a violation of the special permit, there are mechanisms in the special permit about what procedures can be followed to address complaints. And then, as we noted earlier, that if the building commissioner feels as if the applicant or the holder of the special permit is in material violation, the building commissioner can request that the permit be revoked by the Board of Appeal. So there are lots of mechanisms built into the special permit to address concerns of compliance. We do rely upon our town staff and also the applicant's experts in order to ensure compliance. To address the harmony with the neighborhood, there's lots of detail about things that have been talked about, including level of activity with trucks, which generate noise, with hours of operation, and with the amount of materials on site. We've heard from some neighbors that some of those things that the special permit anticipated being improved upon have perhaps not been improved upon as much as had been hoped. So I think we could give some consideration to what else can be done to see if there's additional improvement can be made there. So I'd like each of us to consider all of the things that we've heard from all of the parties and be ready to deliberate at our next meeting, unless there's further questions or anyone else here tonight.
I just had a question for town council, actually, because there's been a discussion about the special permit being issued for the landscaping business as opposed to being issued for the nursery business. So if there is a discussion about regulating all vehicles, as has been suggested, I don't know that we have the right in the special permit for the landscaping business to regulate the vehicle use by the nursery on a Saturday or a Sunday.
That sounds right.
That's kind of the way I've been reading this,
I think they're separate.
yeah. So that would be a separate consideration. I mean, I can see the logic of saying, okay, fine, we're gonna regulate the noise, but I don't know that we have the right to regulate the noise for the nursery business under the special permit for the landscaping business.
That would just fall under enforcement.
Yeah, that'd be just your
separate.
regular noise
Yeah.
violation, under some other provision of the bylaw.
Okay.
It seems, I'm asking the question. I'm
Yeah, it's
not-
a good question.
I'm
I was
not
wondering.
saying that that's the answer, but, I'm just asking.
So, Kevin, you'll
I'm happy to
review
look at
that
that again.
carefully
Absolutely.
and let us know your thoughts about that.
Another.
Yeah, because as I
Yeah.
said, I don't want to include in something, so we sort of have a deliberation that talks about, okay, fine, let's think about, I'm not saying we would, but in the event we did, is that something that we can include? And I don't know that we can.
Another piece of homework, and I don't know if it's an attorney question or if it's a Joe Prondak question, is do we weigh in about the backup alarms?
Well, I've been there on a weekend, and, there's kids and people all over the place, and half of them are looking at their phones and not paying any attention, so the idea of turning off a backup alarm, is frightening to me, but, that's,
But doesn't that fall under Joe Prondak?
that's Joe Prondak.
So, yeah. So I don't even, so one question is it legal to even turn them off? And the other question is that in our lane? It's
Yeah.
really in someone else's
Yeah.
purview.
If you-
I'm just asking a question, I
You'll,
don't know.
in the material that was
Yeah.
supplied to us as an email where Joe addresses this topic.
Okay.
And he, and you might have it in the packet,
Yeah.
Denny, that you just got. He cites a safety concern.
Right.
And that's something that I think we have to be quite mindful of.
I think we have to think about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
does anybody else have anything before we move on? Okay, with that, then I'll take a motion to continue to our next meeting, August 8th. Bill, do we have a time?
We're open.
About 7:15 on August 8th,
So moved.
okay?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And be sure to make sure that nobody from Hendry's site is still here.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Make sure that nobody from Hendry's site is waiting to speak.
Oh, all right, so
I'm sure they're not.
our next agenda item will be the site plan approval for 310 Granite Ave. But I also want to see, how many people here for that particular agenda item?
Oh, wow.
Lots of people. Okay, so we will take that next.
131.
It's our 7:30 public hearing.
No, it's 310 Granite.
Site
It's
plan
gotta be this
approval
one.
for 310 Granite Ave.
There really wasn't much. It's, you know what, it came in the packet.
Here.
In the mail?
It's in our
Remember the mail?
It looked like that.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's see.
Sorry, I'm trying to locate mine now too.
There it is. You got yours, right?
We should have a
Okay, have it.
We should have an application, a narrative, and a site plan. All right. With us is Gilbert Georges. He manages Euro Auto House, 310 Granite Ave. That's at Super Petroleum. Property is 100% in the business district. It's on the corner of Wood and Granite Ave. The property contains a garage, office space, a retail store, waiting room, 2 bays for auto repair and state inspection, also the gas pumps under a canopy. Mr. Georges wishes to make changes to the parking plan that's there for that property. Nothing in the proposal involves any changes to the existing curb cuts. It won't affect any of the customer parking spots. At issue is one of, on the site plan, and I made the mistake, obviously I can't add correctly. There are 13 parking spaces, not 15. Of those parking spaces, there are 8 up against Thomas Funeral Home. There's 2 spaces beside the building and up against those 8, and there are 3 parking spaces opposite the doors on Wood Street. The proposal before you is to change the use of 2 of the 13 parking spaces to used car sales. Presently, there are no used car sales outfits in that area. I'll let the applicant take and make his own comments. He has applied to the selectmen for a used car license. This is the first step. He needs to amend the site plan approval allowing the usage of those 2 parking spaces before he can go to the selectmen for that license. And I'll let him explain everything about his business.
We're just trying to make it right, you know. We just need 2 spots to advertise cars for sale.
So nothing about, I'm sorry. So would anything else in your business change? You would just?
Nothing, no changes at all. It's everything same. We just need 2 spots to use it to keep the car like advertised for sale.
And since we have so many people here, I can maybe summarize what the big issues down there are. Presently, there are 2 sets of pumps down there, and there is a store. X amount of people might use parking spaces for the store. The size of the building is 2,338 square feet, which requires 12 parking spaces. They have 13. That is for the building as a whole. Presently, when you go down there, you see anywhere from 6 to 8 cars with no license plates. That becomes an issue. As Euro Auto House repairs cars, they take and put cars into those spots. And they're also expanding around a bit in the neighborhood for parking those cars. The idea here is he's looking to take and have to dedicate 2 of the existing spaces that he can actually put signs on the car for sale. I have no idea what the no plates on the cars down there mean now. I don't know which ones are being fixed, which ones he owns. That he can answer for you. But I know that the neighbor's issue is one of too many cars, not enough parking spaces.
So Bill, before we hear from the neighbors directly, this is before us, but it will also be before the Board of Appeal?
No, the select board.
The select board.
For a used car license. And that
Yeah,
only comes
yeah.
if you agree to amending the site plan approval, dedicating 2 of those spots, present spots, for that use.
Okay.
So are car sales allowed in the commercial district? Doesn't matter, right?
Is what?
Car sales?
Car sales require a license. It's a state requirement to have the license for used car
Does
sales.
our zoning allow it as a
It
matter
would
of
allow
right?
it in the business district. When I asked Mr. Prondak about the unregistered cars, he said it's in the business district. The unregistered cars are allowed. It's the sale part of it.
Right.
No,
Because the
But
other one
that's
that we
allowed,
had
but
before the
requires-
ZBA was over
It-
in a residential.
To sell them, yes.
So our
Sorry,
our
go ahead.
decision is based on discretion over the parking,
Yes.
not the use.
Yes.
Okay, so the select board will be in charge of the use, where
Well, no, the use is allowed.
the use is allowed by right.
In the business
Okay,
district.
and how many parking spots are they required again?
12,
So they're required 12, and they have 13,
yes.
and they want to use 2, not for parking, but for, so they're really looking
You're
for a waiver for
parking-
1.
But you're parking 2 vehicles with a dedicated purpose.
Yeah, so she's saying they would be looking for a waiver for 1 public parking spot.
These aren't public parking spots, I don't think.
Well, these are their, these
for
are
the
commercial
service.
on
You-
site.
the
You
commercial use.
realistically need to go back and look at the past site plan approval, which I do believe I sent to you.
Because I want, before we hear from the public, I want to make sure we're all clear about what our jurisdiction
Yes.
is on this, because our jurisdiction is not all encompassing.
No, we're not issuing a special permit.
Right,
So
yes.
we wouldn't be considering anything about the signages or additional signs or anything like that?
Signage is
No,
covered
that's the
elsewhere.
Okay.
Lighting?
No,
They're not-
This
we
is
don't
a
need-
special permit, right?
No, it's
No.
site plan approval.
This is site plan approval, it's not a special permit.
So I think strictly speaking, we're looking at the parking situation.
Just a
Right.
waiver on 1 parking spot, unless Bill
Well,
can give
it's
us.
two,
really a-
it's two, it's the
Not really
use of 2
waiver so
parking
much,
spots
it's the use of the 2
within
spots.
that lot.
So I don't think the parking requirements that we have say they have to be available for customers per se.
Yeah, right.
As
Okay.
presently, right.
So they're in compliance with the business zone
Okay.
parking requirements by having 13.
Just like they could use them for their employees, they could use them for
Anything.
any, okay.
They can use them for unlicensed cars, you're saying?
Right.
Well,
They can't put signs on them saying for sale.
Until
Without a
they get an
license.
approval and
Right.
get the license. Okay.
that's not in our purview.
And that's a state requirement that goes through the select board.
Yes.
Okay, so part of what we would look at is which 2 spaces might be used for this?
That's their,
Yeah,
that's his
that's fine.
request.
Okay. All right, with that understanding now, I would like to see if there are members of the public who would like to speak to us on this application. Yes?
Can I ask one question?
Sure, sorry, one
Is he requesting a specific 2 spots, or is he leaving that to our discretion? Are there 2 spots that you're asking for in your plan?
No,
No?
No.
Any
Any
2?
place, any spot.
place? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, then the gentleman,
Charlie can come up as I'm asking this question, answering or asking another question to go with your question. Right now, you have a plan before you which was approved for where those spots are. One of the issues that part of the public is going to bring up is where cars are parked on the site now.
So this isn't how it's currently, parked? This is not how it's currently
this is the
parked?
approved plan from the site plan approval you're telling us.
This is the approved plan. That doesn't mean that that's what's happening. That's what the approved plan is.
This is history, and we're seeing
No,
what?
that,
It's just the approved.
This is
This is what
what's
they,
agreed
this
to.
is
that's
not,
what it's supposed to
this is
be.
what's supposed to
Supposed to be right now.
per their approvals.
Okay.
But this is dated May 2011,
Yep.
this plan.
Yep,
So this plan was done 2007, updated in 2011,
Yep.
showing 13 parking spaces that have already been approved.
yes.
And so the request is just to say, can we use 2 of these for showing, used cars?
Yes.
But you're not adding any spaces, you're not taking any away. You're just dedicating them.
I think
Or-
you need to listen to the public first, then come back.
I'm just
and
asking.
I know, but
We
you
can
need
try to
to,
get our head around it.
yeah, they-
But let's be clear too,
yeah.
that this is an allowed use in the
Yes.
business district.
per the plan, yes.
Okay. Yes,
Thank you. Charlie Boyce, 15 Wood Street. We're not the direct abutters, but we're the first residential property on Wood Street on the same side as the gas station. As you can tell, there are a number of neighbors here this evening. From my understanding, they're all in opposition to this application as well as the application for the used car license, and I'm sure that most of, not all of them will be there for that hearing as well as the other ones that were on vacation. I myself came up from the Cape for this. And a lot of these folks have issues with the owner of the gas station and that operation. And I've tried to explain to some folks, that's not the issue before you folks tonight. It is, but there are also people that have issues with the operation of the business and expanding and going beyond its license and the hours of operation. So there are a number of things, but just dealing with the issue of the parking. There are currently on the plan 13 spaces. My understanding is they need 12 dedicated, and as you mentioned, they're not specifically identified as this number for parking for the folks at the retail shop, this number for the parking if someone wanted to park at the gas station and go into the retail, and this number waiting for the car repair shop. The plan here, if approved today, would send us on to the select board for a hearing on an auto used car sales place, which I would suggest to you is not really needed or appropriate in East Milton as configured now, at one of the worst intersections. Not the worst, clearly. I know Randolph Ave was on the news today. But one of the most congested, morning, afternoon, and it's a cut-through. And we're talking about putting a fourth business on a property that small on the edge of a residential district with 8 preteens from Wood Street to Antwerp Street. I'm getting a little older, mine are not preteens anymore, but this is the wrong place. It's not big enough for a fourth business. And it's too congested. And so again, beyond perhaps beyond this board. But what we're looking at is a business, and it was brought up before, the used car business is currently operating on that site. You've all brought your cars in at some point, I'm sure, to a dealership or to an auto body shop or someplace to have some work done on it. Think of the amount of times they've taken your plates off of your vehicles, front and back, and put them around the shop or around the place. And this is a place with a license to do that. This place currently, as we speak right now, or as of 7 o'clock when I left my house, there were 7 unlicensed vehicles parked in various spots around the business, including 4 along the Wood Street side where they're only supposed to have 3, and then there's a 5th car parked in front of those. This is at 7 o'clock at night. In addition, there are 2 unlicensed vehicles parked on Al Thomas's parking lot. And, if you want to pass it around, if I can get my phone to work, it needs Face ID. I'll send this way. I don't know whose that is. There's a dealer plate on the car sitting beside the unlicensed car in the Al Thomas parking lot. So I would suggest to you that one reason, if you need something to hang a hat on as to why you would deny this request, is the bad faith effort of the applicant. We knew nothing of this until we got the application, the notice in the mail. And we started talking to the neighbors, as you can tell, very upset about it. So, number 1, it's not the right place. Number 2, it's too big. Number 3, it's too congested. And number 4, this is bad faith. Nobody's ever talked to the neighbors. Nobody's ever brought this up. No explanation as to why we're taking plates off of cars and distributing them around. And I have pictures going back several weeks. These are 8 pictures. I have 8 cars, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars tonight. I have
It's actually
pictures.
my own car, I'm sorry.
We can have an explanation as to why there are unlicensed vehicles on a business that doesn't allow, you don't have to have unlicensed vehicles. There is no reason to have unlicensed vehicles on a regular basis, and these are different cars. So it's not like we've got 7, 8 cars just waiting for that license someday, sitting out there with paper on them and paying for them and just letting them sit there without selling them. These cars are different cars. They're rotating the cars. Now, maybe they're working on them, maybe they're taking the plates off, but I suggest to you the most likely explanation is they're selling used cars in this place which should not have a used car lot. It's too many businesses on one lot. And, by the way,
the problem with the parking is just going to get worse, because there are cars on the lot. There are still going to be cars coming in for gas. There are still going to be cars coming in for the retail shop. And nobody's going to walk to that gas station to buy a car. So we have additional cars coming on. So we need more parking because we're adding a fourth business, and they want to take two of them. And I would suggest to you, as it lists in the front, in the application, they simply want to make changes. It will not affect any customer parking spots. We plan to put two vehicles organized in a line in between white lines on the front of the property. If you've seen the site plan, and as you've seen most car dealerships, or most gas stations that sell cars like the ones in Lakin Square and the ones about another mile down here at the bottom of Hallett Street, which is not too far to go to buy a car, so there's no public need. Most of them have the spots right in front of the pumps. It's the most logical place to put them, especially on Granite Ave, because that's where everyone's going to see them. If you put them in any of the other spots, no one's really going to see them. So the idea that someone would come in here and say, I want to use some spots when they're currently using them, and then saying, I'm not sure which ones I want to use, I would suggest to you that's too much for this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? You-
Go ahead.
Ladies before
Okay.
gentlemen.
You'll both get to be heard.
I'm going to try to be quick because I'm sure things that I'm saying are not relevant to what you're doing. I'm not a professional at doing this. I live on Wood Street. My name is Amy Flanagan. I just want to give some context to what is happening at this property. I'm sure you're running your business and there's a lot of cars out there. This is a terrible intersection for anyone who's ever driven through it. Right now, it's especially bad. In addition to that, I know there's a difference between the tenant and the owner, but this property has just kind of gotten out of control. It was a small, tiny gas station. Suddenly, it's a bigger gas station, great. Then there's lights. There's these huge lights. I don't understand how the town changed their light policy, but there's these lit up lights. It's a terrible place for these lights because the abutters' bedrooms are across from the lights. That's fine. So now we have a bigger gas station. We have more traffic. We have the lights. Then we get a notice that there's a sex offender working there. I know that's not relevant, but now they're selling candy bars and soda. This is a neighborhood. We've got kids running around. Like, my kids are older now. I'm glad I'm not there, but we have, like, what is this letter doing? Now they're selling candy bars there. I'm worried about that. Now we're having used cars sales there. It just feels like there has to be a little bit more oversight to what's happening here. The whole thing is just getting out of control. I don't know where the permits end or where they start, but I just wanted you to have some perspective from a layperson who lives on the block who's a little concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Gentlemen, thank
Hi, my name's John Cohane. I'm a town meeting member, and I'm also a resident of Antwerp Street, which is right in that neighborhood. Sticking to just the parking, and I'm not a parking engineer, but if we have a plan that already has 13 spaces approved for an existing business, and now all of a sudden we bring in a different business, it just doesn't seem to me that the same parking formula should apply. I mean, we're gonna have, it's a totally different bit. You might have a daycare center, and then all of a sudden something comes in that has way more parking needs than that. It just doesn't seem to me that there should be like a boilerplate for everything. So it seems to me like this whole parking plan should be revisited. What is it for this particular business? What kind of cars were they thinking of originally? Customers parking. Now all of a sudden we have customers parking and we have cars that are being sold. It just, I don't know the regulations, but it just doesn't seem to be logical to just say, oh, we have a plot plan that's already approved with these many parking spaces, and now I'm gonna do something different, but the parking spaces doesn't change. You know the rules better than I, but it just doesn't seem logical. And that place is, you know me, East Milton Square, as far as parking is concerned, it's a nightmare. We got 30-minute parking signs up, and people park there. You got people in the fruit center with security guards walking around all the time to make sure people don't park there when they go across to go to the gym. If there was the possibility of a little bit of absorption, it'd be one thing, but there isn't. It just, there isn't enough space, and if I can't see how the rules would be the same no matter what business is in there for how many parking spaces there are, because obviously this is different. There's gonna be cars that sit there for a long time. A new car dealership comes in and all of a sudden 13 parking spaces is okay for that too? It just, anyway, it just doesn't, it seems like there's more to be said than, and the other thing too, looking at, and I know this is already approved, but where, you know, when things are already approved and you come back to ask for them again, you relook at them. And I'm looking at parking spaces here that there's no way a person can get in and out of. It has to be a fixed parking. There's 2 on this side and there's 3 on the other side that I know for a fact you can't get into the bay with the cars there, and you can't move one car without, you get to one car without moving another. So what does that mean? You put one out in the street for a few minutes while you get at that car. It just, this parking plan, it just seems like to me that this, we can't just say, hey, this parking plan is approved because it was already approved. Everything is now back on the board because we're changing this business. Anyway, I don't know all the rules and regulations, but that's what it would seem.
Thank you. We are not able to revoke the site plan approval that was granted whenever this was done.
Was this approved by
However,
a
we
former-
can consider this application in terms of this use. So in terms of this plan,
It's a different use.
it's a different use. Denny, you have a question?
I'm sorry, I was wondering, who approved this plan? Was it a former planning board?
Yeah, before any
This
of
was a
us were on it,
planning
so
board
I don't
before?
have any.
Planning board in 2007 and again in
Yeah,
2011.
I had a question too.
Yes, Rich?
I don't know, for you or Bill or whoever wants to answer. And my answer might just be it's the process, but why would we do this before the selectmen? Because is there an opportunity, is there a chance that the selectmen would not give the permit? And then-
Yes.
If they
So why would
cannot
we go
park it,
first?
if they cannot park it, they won't give them the permit.
I mean, just for me, it feels like there's a lot more to this story
I agree.
than parking. And that's why it
There's
would
been
be
a deal
great to
license.
hear what's going on with the selectmen. Like, are they considering, do we know?
They'll go through another whole public hearing process for that license. But before he can apply to that, he has to have dedicated parking for this. The site plan does not have dedicated parking at this time.
Right.
Okay.
We've had this situation just recently when I was on the zoning board.
Okay.
So, you know, we had.
It's awkward, though.
We had to get the variance before they could go to the Board of Selectmen for the license.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
If we're
Cohen.
not being asked to approve anything, then what are being asked to do?
Well, we're being asked to approve the site plan, to say, the amendment to the site plan to allow for dedicated spaces for different use.
But it sounds like there's also an issue of 2 of them are going to go to this. The original plan said they had to be 13, and we're going to lose some of those 13.
Well, you're still having the parking, they're not taking any parking away. It's just a question of whether or not, I mean, I've got this issue about, there are now 4 businesses here. I mean, I live in the neighborhood, so I go by this all the time.
You have a building that is not growing.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah, but-
Parking spaces are built
For
for,
the
the
building.
same size building with different usage needs for parking is going to be different.
No, but see, the regulations say
do
that
that.
we have to have 250 square feet.
one parking
One
space for
parking
every
space for
250.
each 250 square feet. So doing the math, if it's 2,338 square feet, that's 9.5 parking spaces,
So the other
divided by
thing,
250.
the other thing though, to Mr.
There's
Cohen's
13.
point, is we have standards for the layout of parking.
Yeah.
And there's definitely 3 spaces, so on the 2 right next to the building on the right and number 1, that wouldn't meet your maneuverability requirements, and probably one of the spaces over by Wood Street because you can't pull into it with the tight, to the fence. So you have, I'd say, 4 spaces that don't meet maneuverability requirements. So that leaves you 9.
Yeah.
9.35.
Yeah.
And then for a business,
How much did it say in this?
It just says it's 1 space for every 250 square feet, and there's 2,338. That's 9.5 spaces. But the problem is, that, I mean, logically, I'm kind of thinking, why would you be advertising used cars on Wood Street when nobody is there except for people in the neighborhood? You would want to have them facing on Granite Ave where all the traffic is. And that's if you can't park there. So it's, and then sort of looking at all these other spaces, I mean, I've been by, there's cars there all the time. And I don't really understand this situation with the funeral home. Are they using some of the parking spaces?
Funeral home using gas
Yeah.
station or other way
Yeah.
around? It's the other way
Both
around.
ways. Oh.
Other way around mostly.
Yeah.
These guys are parking over there.
Actually, once in a while, they use in the spot from the gas
So I
station.
got a quick question. This is likely a bad one, but, so I get the bylaw as this size building, this many spaces.
Yeah.
But that changes depending on what type of, like if it's a restaurant, right?
Yeah,
It does change on you.
It must.
Does it change on this
On a
use or not?
restaurant, but not
That's
on
the-
not
yeah.
on these other uses.
Well, it does say
So-
that here. If we say, sorry, before
No, go ahead.
I may, other business uses, for other business uses, including theaters, places of amusement, wholesale stores, filling stations, automobile dealerships, automobile repair facilities, restaurants, other places serving food, drink, blah, blah, blah. And any other permitted business use not heretofore specified, there shall be sufficient parking spaces as the Board of Appeals may deem to be adequate under the circumstances to meet the parking needs of each business. So would this need to go to the Board of Appeal?
I was just pointing.
Yeah. The other one did.
I mean, it's clearly
It was the
auto
building commissioner
repair.
who sent it here.
It was the building commissioner?
It was the building commissioner who sent it here.
So he doesn't like us, is that the story?
Town council, Mr. Freitag, what do you think, based on what I read?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Based on what you've read, it sounds like perhaps it is a matter for the ZBA.
I mean, because this is clearly a
Yeah.
repair shop.
Would you
Right.
like to,
Dealership is of question at the moment, but
Right.
number 5?
I mean, because the other one did on Hallett.
Yeah.
Went to the ZBA.
Canton.
Canton,
it
yeah,
went to-
that was,
We do,
yeah.
we
But that
do
was in
like
the
cite like how to
residential
configure
That's true.
something, but this is,
This is
definitely
in-
tied
this
to-
in general,
This is
I get the
definitely
law.
tied to use and
But
intensity
in
of use.
general,
Yeah.
if you have a use where somebody's coming to park at one of the 3 businesses that they have now,
Yeah.
you're going there to use them, right? So if this additional business is a business taking up a spot, not taking up that facility, right? So if you're going to take up some spots, my question would be is, we should, if it does stay here, I would like to know more about what they're using now, because if it's 2 they're taking away, but they have, say, 4 lots on site, I mean, that's,
I think
That
it's
would be
going to the Board of
inappropriate.
Let's
Appeals.
count.
Actually, I think it needs to go to the Board of Appeal.
I do
No,
too.
if you make it easy, we can make it 1 car instead of 2 cars.
Can I ask a question? It's been said now that there will be 4 businesses, so there's the retail store, there's the gas station, there's the repair shop, and then the 4th business would be the sale of these vehicles.
I guess.
It's
It
allowed
seems to
by the
me then
select-
that we're talking about that 5th section, then, and perhaps this is a matter for the Board of Appeals and not.
They're being sold by Euro Auto House. It's not a separate business. It's a different business plan, but it's the same business.
Other
Right,
business
but it's the
uses.
use of the
Right.
building that's at issue here.
Yes,
And, or the property, and it seems to me that the property is being used for a number of things.
yes.
And it seems that at least 2 of those fall under this section that is under the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals, so perhaps that's the appropriate place, especially where we're talking about spaces now being dedicated for the purpose of one of the business uses that's described in section 5. It seems that the appropriate place for this would be the Board of Appeals.
Because they'd have to decide whether or not there's adequate parking for the other 3 uses.
Right.
right.
I think that's right.
And then it would come back, if they say yes, and it comes back to us in terms of which spaces, if you so desire, to amend it. But I don't think you'd even have to.
No.
So, just to clarify for Mr. Cohen, so there are several uses where they do have we do have a set formula, the 250 square feet. Office, retail, banks, financial, a few others. This category, though, however, is discretionary and doesn't abide by that same formula. So your point is well taken.
Okay, one more.
Yes, Rich?
I don't know if Kevin or you, Bill, so, and I'm not saying, I don't know the owner and I don't know what the use is of the cars on property now, but there's a whole bunch of neighbors here. What is, it sounds like, at least, hearing people come up and saying that they've been seeing cars that potentially could be being sold right now. What is what does the neighborhood do? Who do they call? How do they rectify that issue moving forward? Because it's not something we can do here, right? So just, I'm curious at what their
That's a phone call to the zoning enforcement.
Inspectional
zoning
services.
enforcement, all right. Say that again?
Inspectional services is zoning enforcement.
Okay.
It all goes through the building department.
So Joe Prondak?
He has the gentleman whose name I'm forgetting.
Birch,
Birchfield.
Birch, Ale, I don't want to say Aylwood, it's not Aylwood, it's.
He's the enforcement
close.
officer.
Amer.
Okay.
Amer.
So
Amer. Birchfield Amer.
Amer.
for those who are here, the reason we're trying to determine jurisdiction is because there is confusion at times where these jurisdictions lies, and sometimes it goes to the Board of Appeal. They want the planning board's opinion first, then it goes back and forth, and we usually don't have the select board involved in it, but I guess in this one, we might, we do. So, but the adequacy of parking relative to use is normally the Board of Appeal. And so that's a good question that was raised, and I think, Kevin, if you concur, then I'd like to suggest that Bill go back to Joe Prondak, the building commissioner, and have this go to the Board of Appeal.
And at some point it might come back because they'll say, well, how would you like to configure it, planning board? So we might see you again if it comes to that, so.
I think that's right, because I think that the ZBA has to first determine in the first instance how many spaces are needed for this business to operate under the repair facilities or the automobile dealership use.
Yeah.
I think it has to go there first.
Okay. So
Sorry.
I'm sorry that you were guided in this direction first.
Should we see if there's anybody else that has anything they want to say about it?
Is there,
Is there anybody else?
Want to speak?
please, you've been waiting, come forward. April makes a good point.
I too think it should be Board of Appeals. I think we're all wasting our
I'm
time
sorry,
here.
can you identify
My name is
yourself?
Paul DeMille, Antwerp Street, a neighbor, 31 years. I think there's a difference between used cars would be stored as opposed to being parked. I think that needs to be defined. Also, I think if you take a look at the current site plan, I think there's been some different striping put there, and I think that needs to be checked out. Cars are not being parked the way the original site plan was designed. Instead of being parallel to the fence with 3, there are 6 this way.
Okay.
So I think that's something to be looked at. Make sure that the original site plan is being adhered to, because I don't think it is.
And that's along Wood Street, Wood Street, those 3 spaces,
Wood
right?
Street is for the garage area. We're not doing anything on the garage area. We just gonna use advertisement on the other side on Granite Ave.
But I think the concern is that the site plan approval allows for 3 parking spaces there, and it sounds like there's more being used there.
6 cars being parked in the opposite direction, so facing the base.
So if you wanted
But
to
we don't
have
leave
it
anything overnight. It's just customer in and out.
in and out. So, but that's the way parking spaces are. So if
for the
you
garage.
wanted to have a different configuration of your parking, you would need to come back for a request of site plan amendment. So, but that's different than the use. That's how you're laying out those spaces. So
We
that's
just need
different than
one,
number.
we
Yeah.
just need 1 or 2 cars on the other side of the, next to the funeral home.
It's still something in terms of the
We're not gonna
use.
affect anything on Wood Street.
Is that the inspectional,
That
No.
again would be
It's
in
the Board
terms
of
of,
Appeals.
if you wanted a different layout than what your approved site plan has, then you have to come back to us to amend the site plan. But in terms of how many parking spaces, we've agreed now that, and the use of those parking spaces for a different business, that needs to go to the Board of Appeal.
In other words, if you wanted to do 6 parking.
No,
6
that's for the
vehicles there.
garage. We don't need
feel
to.
like-
He wants to use 7 and 8 for the sale of the cars.
Understood, but what we're hearing
No,
is
there's
that
only one
instead
or
of
two.
using parking 3 cars here, you're parking 6. And the reason it's important is that it's the intensity of use on the site.
It was a parking spot right here.
Yeah, but
Can
what
we
I
use only this?
I'm just trying to clarify.
Oh, yeah, so we can use this number 8.
I'm just trying to clarify, if the plan allows you to have 3, and you're having 6 over here on a regular basis, then you need to come back to us and ask for an amendment. And we may or may not allow you to, and it's really for your own safety that we will take that into consideration.
Yeah, that's customer in and out, they leave right away, they don't stay
Not
overnight.
parking there?
No.
That's not true.
They're like
Bill,
on
could I see
standby?
that plan for a second? If you see spot 8, they've striped the spot right beside that, and they're parking a truck straight into spot 8.
To the right.
Sidewalk into 8, comes in
Right,
at an
so
angle.
as far as, again, we realize it can be frustrating where we need to go, but we only have certain jurisdictions.
Yeah, I mean,
So for enforcement of the existing, sorry, it's the building department.
Right.
But we want the owner or the applicant to know that if they want to change what's been approved, they need to come back to us. But as far as enforcement of what's been approved, it needs to go to the building commissioner.
But I would check the striping against your current plan, because I don't think it adheres to that.
So Bill, can you bring that issue up with Joe Prondak, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm surprised the owner of the property isn't here
Thank you very
tonight. That seems a little odd as well. Just one of the specific businesses in a piece of property that has 3 businesses trying to go to 4. You would think the owner would have been here.
Oh,
Okay.
you're sorry, you're not the owner?
I am actually the owner, I have a lease for 15 years.
Oh, so
The
you're,
the owner of the business
I
is
get
this
it.
one.
The property owner, no, he's not here.
I'm sorry, you own the
I
property
own
or
the
the
business,
business?
I own the
One here.
business.
The business, thank you. And all of the businesses?
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Can you, Bill, can you let us all know what the answer to that? Like,
Yes.
he come, all right, great.
You have the lease and the
Thank
gas
you,
too?
guys.
Mostly.
No, just a part of the garage.
Just the garage.
Just the garage.
So are there others here who basically want to say something new, or you just want to indicate that you are in support of the comments that have already been provided to us?
I am in support of the comments that have been provided.
You as well? Okay. All right, and you as well? Okay. Just, I'm trying to be mindful of our time and with a couple more agenda items. Okay, so I'm sorry you're going to have to go, all of you are going to have to go to the Board of Appeal at some time and address this, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
out.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now, we are at our 7:45. Continuation, oh, actually not a continuation of discussion, but opening of an amendment to the special permit for Pulte Homes.
I learned something new every meeting. It's a good one.
Thank you for your patience and getting to you now, and for being back as we said, we needed to do a public hearing. So, Bill, I think there's been a lot that's transpired since our last meeting, and between you and Marion, you're going to give us an update of where we are?
We are. There has been actually lots and lots happening since the last meeting. We've had several meetings of the Housing Committee, the Affordable Housing Trust, the Housing Authority. We've had individual meetings, joint meetings. We've had people making phone calls to DHCD, Housing and Community Development. We've had them by the applicant, by the town, by the different boards within the town, and lots of work with town council. The issues are coming down that, as you read the special permit, it keeps saying ownership. Then there's a piece in there that says that the unit has to be at least 1,250 square feet. Well, Pulte has a house that is 1,350 and 950. And this board's seen those pictures, the different boards have seen those pictures. Seems everybody likes the house, they like the units. Now it's just a matter of how do we make those units work? A requirement built into the special permit is that 2 units must be on the subsidized housing inventory, and that is the rub. Getting to the SHI. The SHI, for those at home, is when you hear a community has to make 10% so that they have met their affordable housing goal, that is the SHI.
Subsidized housing inventory is what SHI stands for.
Correct. I said that.
I don't think.
Twice, but okay. You can say it again and again and
Really
again.
enough.
We're at 5.02. We need to get to 10%. We're looking at taking and putting 2 units for this project because they are required per their special permit. Our issues here are, we say throughout the document that the units will be owned by homeowners. And the issue is DHCD does not like 2 units in one building because there's no long-term maintenance fund that can be addressed for that parcel. The town has been the different boards have been working, trying to find what that mechanism is. So we think we're close, but DHCD will not give us an answer until Monday. We thought they had an answer last week. We thought it was the week before that. They keep pushing us. We have to keep pushing it back, and we keep pushing on Pulte. Now they have to take and push back on the homeowner who is really anxious to sell his property. One of the issues here is, will the board agree to rentals of this property, or do they want to stick with home ownership? That's one. 2, it comes down to changing, the amendment would be to change 1,250 square feet to 950 square feet. This is for this project only. That does not affect any other project that is coming, has gone through. It's just this one permit.
Excuse me, Bill, the 1250 was just
An arbitrary number chosen by
for this special
board.
permit.
Yes.
It's not something in any requirement elsewhere.
There is a requirement in DHCD's documents for inclusion on the subsidized housing inventory that you have to have a 2-bedroom has to be a minimum of 900 square feet. This property is 950, this unit is 950 square feet of livable space. There's more space for utilities and storage in the basement that does not get included into that 950 number. What is going to be discussed here tonight is just making a change in the document on, it's
Page 13.
It's page 13, section 12, first paragraph at the very top, 4th line down, taking and crossing out 1,250 and putting 950. That would be the only change that we make to the only amendment that you would make to the existing request.
Wouldn't we be changing the first line, which says that shall be units owned
No.
by the homeowners?
So just to,
Why not? Why wouldn't we allow the flexibility now?
Because we didn't advertise that in
okay.
our letter or our application. Yes, we want to do that. Yes, we are going back to do that.
Yeah.
What has to happen is the notice needs to be re-advertised, and we need to come back here.
So there's been a lot of discussion between
And-
meetings about how a rental arrangement could work. And the way the application came in and the way this was advertised, it's specific to the Affordable Housing Trust. That is no longer the mechanism, if you will, or the entity, if you will, that the property would be conveyed to for a rental purpose. So
Well,
we
wait
would
a
have
minute.
to have.
The letter with the application says that the building would be transferred to the town.
Okay.
Now, the
It says,
town,
it says here, though,
feel like there's a lot of confusion because there's been a lot of meetings. Don't we want to just update everybody on those meetings first?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, I have to take a look at the ad, because if we said we were going to transfer it to the Affordable Housing Trust, and we advertised that, the Affordable Housing Trust could do anything with it. They could sell it, they could transfer it to somebody else for a rental. So I'm just trying to see what the language was.
It's here, if you'd like to read it.
I don't think I saw
So Rich,
this.
were you a participant in these meetings?
I was, but I'm very confused because I went to one meeting and I'd like to hear the updates from the subsequent because it doesn't sound like, I think there was a lot done after that meeting that I don't know anything about.
And I'd
There's
also
been-
like to hear.
Yeah, there's
So I think
been-
everybody should be updated. I don't think we should
Yeah, I
move
don't know
forward
what's
without
going
that.
on.
Okay, so, Marion, would you like to add to Bill's update? Help
Well,
clarify
I
what
can
transpired.
recap, since my my meeting with the planning board, which was not a hearing, in which I discussed the problem being that at that time, end of June, Department of Housing and Community Development had told the developer and the town planner that they would not accept for the SHI two homeownership units in this small configuration that's proposed in this permit. And that created a problem because the permit requires that the affordable units be placed in the SHI. So I came back at that time and said, I'd like to try, or I actually went to DHCD after talking to members and so forth who had spoken to DHCD to ask them if they would accept in this small configuration 2 rental units, which would be a different form of ownership, because if they're rental units, then the property is owned by some entity, and the entity would rent the 2 units, subject to all of the affordability requirements. A regulatory agreement and a marketing agreement would be required by DHCD. It would be a requirement under the special permit, which is usually called a local assisted unit. It's a special type of affordable housing proposal that's allowed under DHCD regulations and guidelines. So I did get written in the form of an email acknowledgement from Alana Murphy at DHCD that they would count such units like that on the SHI. So that's as far as I got at that point. Because the permit does not allow rental units, the planning board advised that we would need to submit an application for an amendment to the permit. And I wrote, so I filed a generic form for amending the permit, nothing specific on the form, and I submitted a letter explaining this sequence of events to the planning board and talking about some options. And then the town wrote an ad, which is a very general ad, which basically addresses amendments to be considered at this hearing relating to the affordable housing requirement in the special permit, and includes reference to possibly even conveying property, specific property, to the Affordable Housing Trust and having the Affordable Housing Trust decide how to use the property, whether to, it doesn't go into any more detail about it than that, but it includes that option. So it is true that the ad is very broad and allows a lot of things. The question is whether, because my letter doesn't describe some issue, my letter says that I would anticipate that the town would purchase the property, or would receive it, would be given the property. That was the proposal. The developer would give the property to the town, and the town would manage it in some way. It would either, go to the housing authority and ask them to manage it. The Affordable Housing Trust could set up its own mechanism, it could hire a consultant, whatever. I didn't put in my letter the option of selling but giving the property to another nonprofit that would manage it going forward forever. And that apparently is a more likely acceptable option for the town, because neither the trust nor the housing authority so far has said they want to own and manage the rental units. Now, I haven't been to those meetings of the Affordable Housing Trust, but I did come to one meeting where we discussed all of this in general, and there were representatives of the Affordable Housing Trust there. So we now, I submitted my letter, I submitted my application, the town wrote an ad, it's very general. How much can you decide tonight based on the ad? And then the problem is that the ad, for more specificity, refers to the application materials, which consists of my letter. And my letter does not say that you could sell it to another entity give it to another entity other than the town. So the first
It
purpose.
also says the proposed amendments concern conditions in the special permit. And, so that's pretty general.
Yeah, I thought the ad was
so-
very general.
Yeah. And
Well, perhaps we could hear from the public tonight, and we could vote at the next meeting when, after it's been advertised, either broader or more specifically, and then we've covered all bases.
So
But that's not the end of the story.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
before,
That's only
There's
one.
more.
That's only one piece.
There's another chapter which I'd like to just finish very
Yes.
quickly. So the members of the Housing Trust,
Who are here.
including Julie Kramer, who's here, said that they would like to go back to DHCD and discuss this further, because they still would like to see the home ownership option, and they were wondering what arrangements could possibly be made for it to be acceptable to DHCD. And so one proposal, which I think Julie Kramer thought of, was to create a maintenance fund by donating the proceeds from the sale of the units, the affordable units, to the Affordable Housing Trust, and proceeds would be used for future maintenance for these two units. They would be held in a dedicated fund, or part of them would be. And that was the proposal. Now, whether it can actually be done, the question was, first of all, as with the other question I took to DHCD, would DHCD then allow home ownership under those conditions? Well, they haven't given us an answer yet. They seem to be trying to decide.
So the idea would be that some fund would go, not to the housing trust, but would go into the condominium reserve fund. If you're going to do a condo, you have to be doing it that way. You can't be having an off-site, holder of funds.
Managed by the Housing Trust. And
I don't
yes.
even know if you can do that.
You're doing that legally and have it be a condo.
I mean, I personally, I appreciate that input, because it's a very interesting idea, but I wasn't sure whether it worked for a condominium, which is owned by a private owner. I mean, it's a private ownership interest.
Yeah.
Now, the idea, though, would be that the fund would be created as a grant source for owners of this unit who could apply to it. It seems awkward to me, but it doesn't, I'm not sure that it's impossible. It's creative and it's interesting. Maybe you could create the fund for the units themselves, and then the unit owners would have access to it to make capital repairs.
Well, I mean, that's what reserve funds.
That's what would normally be done, to create a reserve fund.
In any condo is like that.
Yeah,
So-
and even for all I know, it may be the DHCD is going to come back and partly is going to say that's the way to do it. I don't know what advice they're going to give us. The problem tonight is, I had originally thought that I would be able to come to you and ask you to approve the option of rental, because DHCD had said, yes, we will put that on the SHI, to amend the special permit to allow a rental option. And now, town council has raised the issue with us of, because my letter doesn't specifically say that the property could be conveyed to someone other than the town, is that somehow outside the scope? Would that option be outside the scope of the current application for the amendment? The ad is certainly very general and addresses everything, anything you want to do. So that's question one. Question two, which I'll set aside as a separate issue, is I would like to ask the planning board to vote to approve the use of the two sizes, of the smaller size units tonight, which they can do with the current language. Because if you do vote that, then if DHCD decides there's a way to do the home ownership units and set up a fund and it can be all worked out, that's all going to be a requirement coming from DHCD, and under the regulatory agreement and the marketing agreement. You don't need to further amend the permit, but you do need to amend it for the unit size, because you didn't do that in May when you accepted this proposal. So there is one amendment that you should vote tonight.
Well, we did, but we didn't do it the right way.
Right, you didn't have a public hearing, that's what you're doing now. So that's one of the things we're asking for in this public hearing. I would ask as a courtesy that the planning board discuss the rental option in general and give us a very good idea of whether you see, you already talked about it at your last meeting some, just to give us some idea, where you are on that. But it looks, well, I guess it's the decision of the planning board whether the scope includes a vote on an amendment allowing the rental and ownership potentially going to some entity other than the town.
Okay, so
And that's where we are.
that's where we are. I want to thank the Affordable Housing Trust and the two members who are here. And I know that they've been working hard on this, and we appreciate the work that you've done on it. Would you like to speak to the board, either one of you, Tom and Julie?
I think we would, yeah.
Yes, please come forward.
We have some clarifications.
Okay.
If you, as they come forward, if you vote for the 950 and what they want to take place on Monday happens, that can happen, and we don't need the second meeting.
If the ownership option goes
If
forward.
they get from DHCD on Monday is a no, then we need to do the rental, which means we'll be back.
Okay. All right, so,
Hi, I'm Julie Kramer. I live at 58 Frothingham Street. I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. And
Tom Callahan, 16 Orono Street, town meeting member of the Affordable Housing Trust, and a member of the Housing Committee and the Fair Housing Committee. Let's just round it out.
housing everywhere.
Everything with housing in the title.
great.
So there was mention of some joint meetings that happened between the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Committee. And I think they were very fruitful, very productive meetings. We talked about why some of us felt it was important to keep these home ownership units as home ownership units. We were unanimous.
Right, actually, both committees, it was a joint meeting of the Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust. So we actually took a vote, and it was unanimous of both committees to prioritize keeping them as homeownership units. The strong feeling, in the affordable housing world, it's not necessarily a mandate at all, but if the market rate units are going to be homeownership, the affordable units, it's generally considered should be homeownership. If the market rate is rental, the affordable units should be rental. That's not a law or written down anywhere, but that's the standard practice. I've been in that field for 30 years, and while there are some exceptions to that rule, that is the general rule that it gets followed in inclusionary zoning and other types of IDP, inclusionary development program requirements. This is a special permit, we know, but that same concept of whatever the market rate units are in terms of their form of ownership or rental, that's what the affordable units should follow.
So, we thought it was important to bring that case forward to DHCD, and Tom and I had a call with Alana Murphy, who was mentioned here, and two of her staff. And we, laid out sort of our reasons for wanting to keep them homeownership units. The idea behind the reserve wasn't that it would take place of a condo fee and a condo reserve that's held by the members of that condo for, replacement reserves or for new roofs or, but that it would be in addition to. DHCD was concerned that with a two-member condo, someone wants to fix the roof, someone doesn't, there's some concerns over that. So we felt that as an Affordable Housing Trust, we could set aside reserves so that if and when, and, our feeling is that a two-member condo can live happily ever after. But if it doesn't, and we understand DHCD's concerns, and we're not, saying that Milton's different, but that we would be able to have funds set aside to address, sustainability, the way the property is run or managed. And so they are separate. And I just think that's important to understand, that we're not saying that they shouldn't have a condo fee and they shouldn't, reserve for,
Yeah.
improvements to the property. It would be separate. So we had a great conversation with DHCD. And I think we're getting there. We're not there to tell them exactly when we need an answer. We did tell them that, there's a purchase and sale agreement. We did say that there's this meeting tonight. But, summer's tight and, people are on vacation and, this can't be a one-size-fits-all. So they really wanted to discuss it internally. So that's.
I think the other thing I would raise is they raised concerns about since this is not, unlike the homes on Woodlot Drive, or is that what it's called? Woodlot Drive? Okay, thank you. These are not brand-new homes, right? And these have not been completely renovated. I think DHC expressed some concern and some interest in doing an on-site inspection of these and making, as I agree with Julie, I feel very optimistic that we're headed in the right direction with DHCD, but I think DHCD has raised some really good concerns about the condition of the properties as they get sold to low-income, low-moderate income, first-time homebuyers in terms of, how long the roof will last, what the condition of the bathrooms and kitchens are, and I don't think they're saying it has to be brand new, but we actually don't want to sell these to an affordable buyer, knowing that in 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to have significant capital investment to put in. That's typically not how affordable condos are sold, as I think a lot of you know. And so I think my guess is DHCD would put some additional requirements on Pulte to make sure those capital improvements were part of the deal. And then I just wanted to amend one, or sort of update you on one thing Marion said. The other advantage to the trust being involved and the town being involved here on the ownership is, and certainly from Julie and I's perspective, I know we agree on this, and I think the full trust would agree on this. We did have a discussion, we didn't have a vote on this, is that the proceeds coming back to the trust of the sale, for that reserve that Julie talked about, but also, you don't need $400,000 for a reserve, a capital reserve. You very likely could use a portion of that, the proceeds from the sale of the 2 condos, and I'm just estimating that they might both sell for approximately $200,000, to subsidize another unit. So we could get 3 units. And that's not an insignificant consideration from DHCD.
Oh, yeah, no.
I think that's what actually
forward.
tipped the scales from the previous conversations to the current conversations, that the fact that they realized, or that there was at least the potential for those sale proceeds to be reinvested in the trust, and the trust would look for an opportunity to create a 3rd affordable unit from this one transaction, if you will. They were, I think, impressed by and supportive of, because they realized Milton has a long way to go.
We don't have CPA.
We don't have CPA,
So
we're, as Bill said, we're at 5%.
Right.
So I think they.
0.02.
Yeah.
5.02. Thank you.
But that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it led them, they were down this comparability issue, right?
Yeah, right.
Those homes on Woodlot and these. And so I think it helped to, get them to understand that, we want production, we want these homes. And so, by having some proceeds at the trust level, we could then buy down some affordability or buy another unit or,
Right. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So one thing, Tom, just for your knowledge, the special permit, while it's general in some ways about the condition of the units, it is specific about the roofs. And it says, roofs of existing dwellings shall have a useful life of at least 15 years. That should...
DHCD would be pleased to hear that.
Doesn't say anything about windows or other things.
The
but
heating
roof.
system.
Alana did say they would probably want to do an on-site inspection.
right.
Yeah.
If this is going to happen.
And I think if these were rental units, which obviously, is not our preference, you wouldn't want to turn rental units over to a nonprofit who had to manage that in a condition that wasn't
Oh,
at
yeah,
least,
right.
a 10 to 15-year horizon.
Now, could you also speak to the idea of a nonprofit, if they do become rentals and DHCD doesn't come to an agreement on this ownership? This idea, because if we're being asked to give a general support for rentals if the ownership doesn't come through, because the discussion had been the possibility of to the Affordable Housing Trust, but now it's, my understanding, it would be to a nonprofit, a housing nonprofit. Is that right? Can you talk about that a little bit for the?
Sure. I mean, if the decision was made that they can't wait for DHCD's answer, or, DHCD comes back with an answer that says they're not in support of home ownership, and it went to rental, there certainly a 2-unit rental can be managed by a nonprofit. Certainly, especially if they don't have a mortgage on that piece of property, right? So the proceeds from the rent are going to the management of the asset, of the units. That certainly can be done. I think the reason why we took a vote when we were in a joint committee is because we really weren't in favor of that. It can be done. It's done all the time. But I think it was meaningful to us that these were home ownership units. They're building home ownership units, and therefore, these units should be brought into Milton as home ownership, low affordable units. So it can be done.
But
It
the
does raise a lot of
Affordable
questions
Housing
about-
Trust is not interested in managing them.
We certainly don't have a
ownership of it.
capacity as a volunteer group to manage that. We would worry about even without a mortgage, we'd worry about, and Julie's more expert on this than I am, because this is what she does for a living, but in terms of the insurance costs and the upkeep and maintenance and,
And evictions and,
the town essentially is owning these properties, right? Even if we contract out with a nonprofit, the town's retaining ownership, I would assume.
No, your trust is a separate entity.
Well, we're not owning it. It's
So-
going to a nonprofit.
So if
Right, but
it went to the trust.
But are we deeding it to the nonprofits? Is that?
No. I mean, if you were renting, if it was a rental.
Yeah.
And you had title to the property.
You being the trust.
You, the trust, are separate from the town.
Yes, so I probably should have used the trust. The trust has shown zero interest in doing that. I mean,
It's
I'm not
tough.
saying we wouldn't do it, but it just.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough to get insurance.
Oh, yeah,
It's tough to
no,
get,
absolutely.
it's tough to.
We're
I
relatively-
totally agree. I just want to make clear about this, is that the trust was what we were talking about.
Right.
And the trust
Yes.
is separate entity from the town.
Right.
Correct.
So,
Okay,
So it's just the responsibility, the maintenance, the costs, the vacancies that would arise, the lack of income coming in during those vacancy periods. There's a lot of variables for a volunteer, not brand-new trust, but a trust that, because we
Or has
haven't
owned
had
assets.
money,
Right.
we haven't been able to do much. It doesn't feel like the right first transaction for us, and I think that's part of our decision, although I think what I said earlier about ownership units should get affordable ownership units. The market rate ownership units should get affordable ownership units. So I think, we obviously would be open to a continued conversation on the rental, but I think you'd have some serious convincing to convince the trust to accept this as a rental unit. Right?
I agree.
Okay, so,
Sorry, but
Denny, one sec.
it's just not I think it's not the most favorable transaction for the trust.
Denny, did you have a question about the ownership versus rental?
I know.
All right, I just wanted to ask you about the 1250 square footage versus the 950. I know, Julie, you've spoken to that before. did the trust take a vote on that matter, or you want to express any opinions about that matter tonight? 'Cause we are planning to take a vote on that tonight, an official vote outside of our prior vote.
You know, I still stand to my initial comments that I felt that, you know, they were obligated to deliver 1,200 square foot for each unit, and now they're asking for a change to that. I think that, you know, they're builders, so I'm not sure why they can't build on additional square foot, but.
They need a variance.
Yeah, we all need variances, right? I got one myself. And so I think that's a decision for you. I certainly feel that, you know, you got to give and take in this world. I'm not sure what we're getting. I know what they're taking, and so that's how I feel.
Have you seen the units?
I've seen pictures of the units, and I know the building structure, you know.
Yeah.
I would say that I think it's important that we try to individual, you know, to do individual meters and keep everything individual.
Yeah.
So that if it becomes an ownership, you know, structure, then you have your own gas meter, you have an electric meter, you have your own water meter, you know, you have your own washer dryer hookup. You know, I think that's important. But, you know, I certainly have lived in a 900 square foot unit for many, many years, 2-bedroom with 2 kids. So I think it can be done, but I was concerned that you folks were giving up something without really something in exchange.
Right.
That was really my issue.
And Tom?
I think the possibility of the third affordable units is key here.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, and it's really in DHCD's hands, because I think Pulte would be happy with the ownership versus the rental as well.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else here who wants to address the board on this matter? Okay. Seeing none, we have a request. Town council has advised, and I am apt to take town council's advice, that we should not vote on the rental aspect of this based on the application and the advertisement. Does everyone agree with me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll give a general indication of our thoughts about the rental. But before we do that, we can take a vote to amend the square footage requirement on page 13 of the special permit. You have it?
Yep.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay, so we had indicated our support of the 950 square foot unit previously in a vote, though it wasn't a part of a special, of a hearing, rather. We don't have anybody here.
You have to close the hearing and then take the vote.
All right, thank you. You want to make a motion to close it?
Yeah, take a motion to, make a motion to close the hearing on the amendment to the special permit. We're addressing the square footage requirement.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, would you like to make another motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to amend line 4 on the first paragraph on page 13 to read, in a living area of at least 950 square feet instead of 1,250 square feet.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I think I'm opposed.
One opposed.
I'm opposed.
4-1. Okay. On the issue of the rental, we had indicated previously again that, not perhaps unanimously, but that rental is preferable
Excuse me,
to
I just
land.
want to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that we don't have to withdraw any part of our application in order to come back with a new application for an amendment, if we have to, for the rental.
You might have to just make a new application.
I talked with town council, Marion, about just a new application.
Right. And so that's permissible?
Yeah.
Because it was so general in the original?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't vote no.
Yeah,
We
we didn't
vote no.
reject it.
We didn't reject it. So I don't think anybody had like a preference for rental over homeownership.
Right.
It was only rental because we thought that's all we could get.
Yes, that's right.
So I don't think anybody was like, oh, no, we want to throw ownership under the bus. It was, we thought that was the only thing we could get. We
Right.
wanted something on the SHI.
Well, and this is where, again, I thank Affordable Housing Trust because of their work in thinking about this a little bit more and getting DHCD hopefully to come around to this ownership with these other changes. And of course, the third unit is, has been said, is very enticing too in terms of the square footage that we've accepted. So that would be preferable, I think. And we'll know on Monday. So we hope.
So they say.
But as far as, because it would be a new hearing and new advertisement requirements, I would suggest a new application that could always be withdrawn if they agree to the home ownership in the interim.
Right, 'cause you
So we don't
only-
lose the time.
Right, so the
Because you
board,
only need it if there's only rental.
Right.
so the
correct.
board is being asked to take a vote. Does the planning board support the idea of rental? So that they move it forward?
It's not a vote on the amendment.
Only in place of home ownership, should it not be agreed to, the home ownership as proposed, not be approved by DHCD.
But Kevin told us we can't do that.
Well, we can take,
Well, I would,
Yeah, we
I
can give
would
consensus.
say we'd like,
Oh, yeah.
I'd be interested in the sense from,
Well, I think
a
we
sense
already-
from the
We already
board.
did
I
that.
think we already
I
discussed
thought we
it.
already
Very
said
good.
that.
I
So
thought you did too, but
I'll reiterate, I have a
it's been
strong
3
preference
weeks.
for
and-
ownership, but
Yeah.
if rental's
Yeah.
the only way to make it work, then I'll totally support it. If we're creating an affordable unit somehow, I'm in.
all right, so if you'd like a vote on that, we can take a vote on that. But do you want just general consensus?
Well, we can't vote on it because we didn't post it.
Right.
Well, it's not a binding vote in terms of the amendment
Right.
application. So whether you want to call it a vote or you want to take
A sense of
a sense of the
sense
board.
of the board.
I
that
agree
last
with
week.
April.
We did, but
We
does
did.
anybody have a change of heart?
No, I think
And
you
I don't
all,
know, Denny, if you even weighed in, I don't remember.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I did, but I agree with Rich. I much prefer ownership. I'm 90/10, but if we have the back up against the wall and the only way we can have counted units, I would be willing to work with everybody because everybody's working so hard on this. But, like you, I'm sure you would prefer ownership.
Yeah, and I think Pulte really wanted to do the home ownership option. It's just a very unfortunate circumstance that we found ourselves in, and perhaps we're going to work our way out of it again. I hope so.
Thanks to
Of course-
Julie and Tom, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
Yes, very much so, thanks to them. And the time constraints are very difficult right now. We don't really know whether this can be extended. Monday decision would certainly be very, very helpful to give us, because if that decision, if DHCD had clear decision with some idea of what conditions they would attach, that would be part of the DHCD application process for the regulatory agreement and the marketing agreement. And they will be able to impose those on the applicant. You have taken a vote to allow the unit size variation. So that would mean that you would then not have to go to a second hearing, as I understand it.
Right.
But of course, all bets are off if they don't. Then we have to. And then I would just caution everyone that I don't know whether this property will still be available. There's nothing you can do about it. And if it isn't, then it's going to have to start all over again looking for some property.
Right.
I think this is a really unusually nice one, and so I certainly hope that it can happen. That's my personal opinion.
Well, thank you, Marion, and thank you, Reed, for your work on this as well. And thank you, Kevin, for your work on this, and Bill for your work on this.
Thank you,
All right.
Mary, for coming to every meeting and staying until the end.
We actually have
One more thing.
Actually, two, actually, and we'll make them quick, I believe.
Yeah.
We have under new business, the 865 Brush Hill Road.
Oh, yeah.
Bill?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on, Sean.
And thank
Sleeping,
you
yeah.
for, good night, thanks, Kevin.
Bye, Kevin, thank you.
And you got to sit for a long time and hear a lot of things. Thank you for
No,
your patience.
You do good work here, no doubt about it. Listening to all that is
Does it make your head
interesting.
hurt?
All right, so why don't you give us an overview? I think we've all read it, but
I
just
sent
give
a
us
memo back on July 11th
Yep.
to Bill and Joe Prondak. So this is the purpose of the meeting tonight, or my request tonight. I do have the plan for Bill on a flash drive.
trying to get it up
whenever you're
online.
able to get it. Request number one is eliminating a sidewalk. In two locations, they're non-contiguous, or they are semi-contiguous to a walking path to the back of the site that was eliminated along the approval process. During our process, during construction, in putting the site back together and having our landscape architect review everything and everything we were doing, that sidewalk was decided we could live without it. If it doesn't do a whole lot for anybody. So that's really request number one. I think it's probably the biggest one of them all.
But you had room here in front of the existing building, the Dupuy house, right, to put it in? But you chose not to without coming back to us?
Correct.
And do you want to tell us why you did that?
I haven't got an answer for you that would make any sense to you. I wasn't part of that decision, to be honest with you.
And how difficult would it be to add that sidewalk, at least that portion of it by the Dupuy? I can understand the section that's over near Building 8.
Yep.
Being the end and that pathway. I recall that the neighbors there did not want that pathway.
Yeah.
And while it had historic ties to the church, it wasn't necessary with the new uses, right? But, and the reason I ask it is because, we're trying to have sidewalks not be waived on all of our applications. And so we did talk about that, and we did look at the sidewalk, and when we did this review, and when we granted this permit.
You
So-
were the only one on the board then, of all of us.
So good memory.
I know, thank God you remember.
And I've been one particularly interested in sidewalks because I do feel as if, especially when I remember that this was maybe not restricted, but age targeted, and you start looking at people who are getting older and walking on the street versus walking on the sidewalk makes a big difference.
Sure.
So I guess that's my view on that, and I don't know how the rest of the
So
members
the answer to
feel
your
about
question is,
that.
it's doable. We do have, an established landscape there now with irrigation and other things in place, but it is doable.
So can you show, where was this?
Go ahead, wait a minute.
That location right there
Right
is.
here.
Yep. Yeah.
And where would it terminate?
So it would terminate, I believe, at the driveway of, the first driveway or the nearest driveway of the Dupuy house, which is just up around as the road curves. I think if you go backwards, Bill, you'll see it. Or you go to the site plan that I have highlighted.
So it's that, is it?
In here?
Is it
No,
that
I
house?
think you got to go out and then go back to the other.
I mean,
folder.
even going to Building 7, if you think about people who want to go get their mail, maybe
I have a
walk,
site plan on here.
get a little bit of exercise to walk to get their mail.
Yeah, if you go
They could walk on a sidewalk all the way to the mailbox if you built the sidewalk that you didn't build, right? So if you look at the site plan, the mailbox is right at the here, and the sidewalk wraps around.
Yep.
And if you continued it to Building 7, then
Drawing?
Yes.
I'm looking at the drawing, yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the blue?
So the yellow.
Oh, the yellow.
So you put this in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the mailbox.
Yep.
So if you, the idea too is that you have landscaping in here, and this was a preserved building, so you could have a leisurely walk to get there. So I'm bothered by nobody coming back and asking us to reconsider it. And I can understand other things, if trees, I can understand the other about the top, but this seems to me, we grant this, and then what's the next applicant going to do? Say, please forgive us for not doing it? It just bothersome to me that way.
Sure, understood.
So where would this have gotten caught if he didn't come back?
Right. It got caught a certificate when
I
Joe
see.
Prondak caught
I see,
it.
okay.
Yep, Joe and Bill
So
did.
the process worked.
The process worked.
Yay! Hallelujah, somebody
Important
caught
for
it.
people to know.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't have a problem changing the parking space from 2 to 1. There's ample parking, and that's to save an existing tree, which we asked you to do.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
This is one of the times we've worked really hard on trees.
Yep.
And I don't have a problem narrowing the grass strip. And the item 4, because of your other placement of other utility items, I don't have a problem modifying the landscape. So in my 1 of 5 view is to accept those, but not accept the elimination of that sidewalk.
And the sidewalk on the tail road you're okay with? It's really just to,
Yeah, that little
Yep.
piece up there,
Yep,
I know,
yep.
it's
Okay.
one home there, I think it's,
I mean, this one?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the part that I'm not comfortable accepting is not doing that.
We want to keep that.
I want to require
Yeah.
that to be done.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
And what's going on with the blue?
the blue is the narrow sidewalk strip.
Oh, okay,
That
that's the
narrow
grass
strip.
strip,
2 foot.
and we're okay
And
with
then
Grass
that.
strip is 2 feet versus 4 feet.
Yeah, that was
And
okay.
this parking space going from 2 to 1. It's
That's
against
fine.
There's a tree, a significant tree there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So I mean, if that's your recommendation, Cheryl, I'm happy to follow it. You were
Yeah.
part of the review, and
Okay, will somebody make that motion then, unless there's further discussion? Mary, do you have any comment on it?
Yeah.
Yes, for the sidewalk.
Penny,
Yes, for the sidewalk?
Okay, so
see how it's 2 feet?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 4.
the only thing I have a problem with it is similar to what Cheryl has. Why are we being this after the fact? Why are we being asked this after the fact? I mean,
This is your second parking spot? They kept the tree versus,
that's great, but I'm talking about that strip with 2 feet. I'm gonna go along with it, but I have a problem with
The timing of not coming back. The reason for it had to do with the slope of the drainage.
Yeah, on the drainage
Okay.
facility, some of these changes kind of come up as you go, and you don't always know what you have room for, and that's really, there's a side slope that we had to contend with there. And You
Okay.
can see that fence area,
this drops off right
yeah,
there.
significantly.
Well, I wouldn't want you to have to cut into a slope necessarily.
Yeah,
so
on that-
I think we would have approved it, so I will
Right.
approve it. But I just, because we're going to be working with this developer on Carberry, I would appreciate the
wanna send
heads
the
up.
message now.
See the trees right here?
Yeah.
We don't want
That's the
this to
other
be an
reason
ask
they
for
didn't wanna push
forgiveness
it
later.
back.
Yeah, we don't want to, I don't want to.
They tried to save the trees, so they pushed the sidewalk back this way.
When their first tree preservation plan, we asked them to revise it and add trees that they would try to keep, that they weren't originally thinking they could keep.
Some of
and
those are in that
Some of these are
location.
there. So there is compromise that's required in order to do that, but everyone probably realizes a lot of trees were already removed, for this development, so.
But I just want to reiterate, I think we would approve it. I just think we deserve the respect of being asked prior to the completion of
Yeah.
the sidewalk.
What happens
Absolutely.
when it's, when we're on the fence about it? You might
Yeah.
not have
Right.
the
Yeah,
same
it's kind of
story.
hard to say no after the fact, but I mean, they had good reasons for it,
Right.
but just, that's all.
But right, so, but you're absolutely right about this developer going to be doing a lot more work, yeah.
a lot of these things, so it's just.
And we do want them to come back.
Yep.
So, any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll take a motion.
I don't know what your motion was.
All right, so my motion would be to deny,
You want to approve the requested changes of 2, 3, and 4 in the applicant's letter of July 11th, 2019, 2019, and deny the request for the elimination of the sidewalk,
With the exception of.
with the exception of
portion-
the portion
By the single
It's
unit.
noted as station plus 15 and station 1
On
plus
Road
70 on Road
C.
C.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your patience waiting.
Oh, thanks for listening.
Oh, yeah,
Try to get
thank
home.
you.
All right, lastly, believe it or not, next week is when articles are due, although I've got an email, I don't know where the select board stands, but there was talk about not having an October meeting and having a January meeting instead. Bill, do you know where that is? So
Oh,
I
those are
think,
terrible, because remember how hard February was? Because the holidays.
but the thing is,
But-
if we had a January, we could have until November to work on zoning, which my reply back to Town Administrator Mike Dennehy was that's preferable than October, because we don't have a lot that we can submit for October. And if they don't have a lot themselves, it seems wasteful to have a town meeting for a small agenda.
I agree.
So the only thing that I think we could do is the planning board associate. And because we already have it written, we already had the government study committee in and talk about it. The other one was just correcting the wetlands responsible party. And it seems like everything else we wouldn't have time to submit by next week. Does anybody have comment about that?
I've been thinking about the alternate,
The associate?
so the government study committee referred to it as alternate, but then Cheryl's been referring to it as associate, I noticed when I was updating the minutes or reading the amended minutes. So that was one thing.
I think that's because that's what some regulation calls it. Is that right, Bill? The associate versus alternate?
Most of the times they're called alternates.
But there's something, well, all right, we'll dig it out.
So I called Situate because I wanted to see how they did it. And they have an election. It's a one-year term, and actually it was a contested election in May. 2 people ran.
Oh, wow.
And then if people don't run, then they have an appointment by the Board of Selectmen so it's kind of like, if we could get people interested in running, I would think it would be a good thing, and if it doesn't, we can appoint them. And it would be the same, I think it's the same guidelines as if one of us stepped down and there was an appointment made, it would be by Board of Selectmen and Planning Board, right? In a joint meeting?
I think so.
So, because I was I was having kind of a challenge with the idea that if somebody gets appointed and they're not elected, and then they are coming to the meetings, are they part of us? Are they at the table deliberating with us, asking questions of the applicant, even though we've all been elected, but this person's been appointed? So I was just grappling with that, and I thought Situate's solution was a really good one, in that it's an elected position. If nobody runs, then it's appointed. But if we could have it elected, I think that would be fantastic.
Question though, I thought during one of the, I can't remember what meeting it was, but we asked that question about them delivering. I thought the answer was no.
First of all, it would only be for special permits.
Right.
Because that's what's allowed by law, my understanding is. Town council has confirmed that. So if there's no special permit application, they wouldn't be at a meeting. So if there's nothing on the agenda that is a special permit, then the alternate or associate wouldn't be they could be at the meeting, but in terms of
for them to vote on.
deliberating, it's up to us. And I thought what we said was that if they're called upon to vote and they haven't been able to ask any questions, then maybe their questions wouldn't have gotten answered. Are they feeling like they can really make a meaningful vote? So like I used an example of when I first came onto the board of having a lot of discussion on an application, but yet not being able to vote because it was an application that came in before my tenure started. But I contributed a lot to the conversation. So it kind of, it depends, I think, how the board feels about whether that person should be able to contribute. But my
What
feeling
was
is
the
it wouldn't be.
idea behind it? Is it that people felt like it was a problem because we had people missing at meetings or something?
Well, if somebody has to recuse,
Yeah.
and it's a special permit that requires 4 out of 5 votes.
Okay.
And then if somebody's recused and then somebody misses more than one meeting, and then you can't vote if you've missed more than one meeting.
Right.
So it does sometimes require us to continue, so it takes longer to do the business. That was the thinking behind it.
Yeah, I know when I've had 40B applications in other towns where I've been town council, we've had on the zoning board, we've had alternate members to cover the situation where, you need to have a quorum.
And is it like a juror? Like, so they're in wait?
Well,
Or do
yeah,
they
but
deliberate?
they're there.
They're there and they're listening to the discussion.
Yeah.
But are they participating in the discussion?
Well, yeah, it depends. It's sort of whether the chair lets them, but, but they kind of do.
Yeah.
They don't take the vote,
Okay.
but they participate in the discussions, and they're certainly there they can ask questions and all that sort of stuff, because they may come up with something that somebody hadn't thought of,
Right.
Right.
And they're appointed?
Yes. Well, because it's a ZBA, and all the ZBAs.
Who they're appointed by?
Moderator, as it is here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, here, who's appointed? Well, here it would be the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, and a joint committee would be.
Do you have how we did it in the article? Did I
fill
say
a
you had the article?
Yeah,
Still a vacancy.
The article is right here. I think it's in there, I think. Yeah, I think the way it's in there is the select board members and the planning board members would have a joint meeting and they would appoint someone. So I got really excited that Situate did this thing where they have it elected and people are running and it's a 1-year term and it's a great way to get into the board and see if you want to do it or not.
It's
And
1-year terms?
It's a 1-year term.
That wouldn't help us then in the scenario of people leaving.
Yeah, but you'd have you basically have 6 people on the board.
No, yeah, I get it.
You know what I mean? And it would,
Do you mean if there's a permit that extends?
Yes,
like you just
So
have
you,
the coverage.
you'd both be leaving, so.
Yeah.
It does say a joint meeting of the planning board, and it says Board of Selectmen, but it would be Select Board. Need to be changed to Select Board.
Yeah. So that's the way it would be. But I was thinking, I don't know, I got really, I could actually
So-
picture this working.
All right, so our question would be, if that's the case and it requires further, then we have basically nothing to
Nothing.
submit for October 2nd,
Are
except
we
for a wetlands
good?
correction.
Is that what we're talking about? Like, are we good with it?
Because it
or-
would have to be next week that we'd have to submit the article.
I'd be honest, I like all of the options that came up. I think it's a great idea. If somebody's willing to sit here and not have a vote, it's a tough job. I mean,
I know, I agree.
I mean, and the thing is, we can amend it between now and
yeah,
when it
I mean, I've only been
goes
on for a year,
print.
a little plus, and not once has we've come across that. So it very well could be the person has a vote once in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also have had to change meetings, dates and stuff because of people's travel schedule and stuff, so maybe we wouldn't
But
be
see
as
that-
flexible. I don't
And
know.
a-
Also,
and a
there
call
are-
in
I
from
would have an
late at
issue with
night.
that, though, because just because I may be traveling at, third week of August, I wouldn't want to see us go, well, sorry, Rich, we're going to all have that meeting,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
somebody else is going to vote for you. I would have issue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we're looking to just get somebody on board, and then it's,
For
it's
illness
your,
or-
it's your decision. I mean, you're going to go away third week of August. We were all going to have a meeting. Are we okay? I mean, let's move it for you. I mean, if it truly becomes hey, you're good with that, and let that other person do it. I mean, I feel like it should be your decision at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the thing, though, to think about is like the instance where I was months on the board and not able to vote, so they had to have The other 4 had to be,
Unanimous.
agree. And then the other thing is if anybody has to recuse. Those are the
Yeah.
bigger ones to me
No, I was
than
just bringing
somebody
up the points
traveling.
It's like an
of, those are the ones
illness
that I
or
have an
something.
issue with. Like, I wouldn't want, and I'm not saying that anybody would, but I wouldn't want somebody to say,
Right.
well, sorry, Rich, this, you're waiting for this one, but you can't
Rich,
make that
when are you
meeting.
traveling again? Look
Yeah.
at meeting that
Yeah,
That's the day
right,
we're
yeah.
having that meeting. That, obviously
yeah,
I'd have,
that'd be
and I
okay.
don't think that would ever come
Yeah.
up.
No.
So that's why I'm saying, I mean, I think I'm good with going along with what everybody was saying, even if we wanted to have it appointed. I don't,
If we want to submit
Yeah.
it, we feel like that's the only thing that we can change that after it's submitted.
I kind
me.
of feel
Would it
like,
be
I
outside
kind
the
of feel like we
scope?
kind of have nothing to lose by doing it the way Situate did, because if we have it elected, if there's no interest and nobody runs, then it would be appointed, which is what was the original idea.
the only.
Well,
amendment
here
I would
in,
ask-
I'm just looking up Sudbury, for
Yeah?
example, has a application. All residents of the community can serve as an associate member of the board. You submit a volunteer application, and they're accepted, then the position is for 1-year term. So
Are we-
you're
would we
you're
be good with
appointed
it
by
with
the
a 1
planning
year?
board.
Would we be, like, in your case that you were just mentioning, you'd still have that issue of somebody not being, you would still not have a 6th person voting, because technically,
It would be in the
you're
same
new, you
cycle.
can't vote, and so aren't they, because they're out every year.
Well,
Wellesley has
I
a
guess you
3-year
can re-up
term.
it, right?
Yeah, you can always
Like, I like your
renew
idea,
it.
but I almost feel like
Yeah.
it should be 2
Well,
or
Wellesley has a
something.
3-year term.
I think most of the time they're 1.
Really?
I've never seen them longer than that.
I'm just saying if that was a real concern about the lapse in years, because you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah, you're
helping.
right. And it would be in the exact same cycle with the election
If that
cycle.
isn't,
Yeah.
if that isn't a big deal, then I get it, make it 1.
So Wellesley has a 3-year term, but I'm not quite sure how they work. I think they are appointed, but I didn't get through. They're going to call me back, but I just talked to Situate today and said, how does it work?
Braintree has it as well.
And how long?
It would fill in for one of the 5 board members when special permits are being considered. So the associate member can pinch hit, according to this yeah, so as you said, sort of dealing with the situation where somebody has to recuse themselves or all that sort of stuff. So it's appointed by the, in Braintree's now a city, so it's a city council that appoints them. And it's also, I think, looks like 1 year.
Because if they were going to be appointed, it would be really good to have like credentials. Like currently we don't have an engineer, so it would be really good if.
Well, that's why you would do the volunteer application, like.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, and then, or like last year we didn't have a lawyer. Like having,
Count yourself lucky.
sometimes if you, no, it's always good to, because, we have lawyers come to the table, we have engineers come to the table. It's good to have somebody who can speak that language, because there
Yeah,
were a few
so,
questions
yeah,
that
so
came
in
up.
Sudbury, it's a 2-year term.
Okay, 2 years sounds better than one.
I
And
think-
now, that's of 2019.
Is
and
it elected or appointed?
It's appointed.
It's a year to get going.
But they do a
I know, right?
They do a volunteer application form.
I kind of like that too, because
Yeah.
then if you have several people who apply and you say, oh, there's a civil engineer, we'd really love you.
Right.
Yeah.
No offense to the others, but as you said, you can kind of see year to year what skill you might be
Right.
needing on a board.
And that
So,
could actually be
and this
beneficial for
asks
them
for
to
a brief
participate.
resume of your background and experience, your address, years you've lived in Sudbury, municipal experience if applicable, educational background, employment or other pertinent experience, reason for your interest in serving, times that you're available, and do you or any member of your family have any business dealings with the town?
So who accepts them? Like, is it
The
appointed?
planning board.
See, I like that
I do
better,
too.
to be honest with you, because I don't understand why another board would appoint
Yeah.
a planning board member.
And then what happens is that the chair of the planning board then appoints the associate member to
Right.
vote on that special permit.
Yeah, that's the way ours is written,
I like
Yeah,
that.
that part
looks
of
good.
it, yeah.
Would you like to take the select board out of it in our case? I
Yeah.
kind of would, because,
I like that better.
I do too.
yeah.
All right, so.
I never didn't
um,
understand why we would
Could
have
we,
this like.
so was that, what town is that before? we-
Sudbury.
Sudbury, so the Sudbury model.
That was
But the thing
May
is-
20, May 24,
Thank you for looking both of
2019.
it up. Both of
So,
you.
Bill, can you
24,
see,
2019, this year.
Oh,
did you see if the select board would accept an article from us on August 9th?
Yes.
Or 2 articles from us on August 9th?
So
a
you
week
could
later
even look
than
at the Sudbury
the deadline.
bylaw and see how it's worded.
That's
what we could do.
Just make sure we do
Sure, there's
word
less that
check.
they
to
need to do
get
too.
pull out.
Quick question,
right.
so, just so we're on, we cover this. We did bring this up, and they asked us to bring back, though. Are we covering anything that anybody else might have thrown rocks at?
No, the reason we actually sent it back ourselves, because we learned close to town meeting that the government study committee had done some work on an article like that, and had not, the planning board at that time did not support it, so it did not move forward. We wanted the opportunity to speak to that committee to see their thoughts about it, and so that's why we sent it back to ourselves.
But we don't have anybody that had issue.
No.
Okay, that we need to address. All right,
There was
good.
discussion
wouldn't have
about
to have a
appointed
public hearing.
versus, we usually do it after
Yeah.
we submit them, but there was discussion about whether it should be appointed versus
Okay.
elected.
Yep, and I remember
But I think,
And deliberate, should they deliberate or not? Because like a juror doesn't. A juror stands
Right.
in the wings, hears the testimony, but doesn't say anything until they're in the jury.
Yeah, no, I
That's
remember
what
all
I
that.
was
I just
kinda
didn't
like-
know if there's anybody that
Yeah,
came
but see,
in.
in this situation, you're appointed, you're there, you're
Deliberate.
appointed in that special permit application.
Right.
So,
But you could get
Right.
appointed midway because somebody missed too many meetings.
right.
You know what I mean? So you have to sit there in all those meetings.
Yeah.
Are you, sorry, are you saying appointed for a certain amount of time or appointed specifically for?
Or
a
to
pro-
vote on that special
So there's
permit.
That's
two-
specific.
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
two
cool. So you
appointments.
get maybe 5 people sitting there waiting, and you might pick one?
Well, you only pick, people only pick one associate particular.
All right, so you are saying you pick one.
Yeah. you
Yeah,
pick-
and
So
then,
what happens
then they
if
have
it-
to, for them to be put in the ballgame, they have
Yeah.
to be appointed by
Right.
Cheryl.
I get it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
So we would have it, the planning board would select, so we would have a process where we would select by majority vote, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we would,
After application.
application first, we vote, then they get appointed for 2 years, I guess, if we follow Sudbury. And then the chair, or whoever is the chair,
Whoever's the chair.
would then
Could be you,
appoint, could be you next time. 'Cause April's,
not me.
I'm working on trees. Okay, all right.
So,
Glad we got that. I'm glad we did something. And signs, we need the
did.
signs.
yeah, I
But
think
that's
we-
on the lawyer. That's not on you. That's on,
that's, yeah, now we have Kevin, we can ask Kevin. Our
It's
general-
time to go.
I know,
I would
I
say
was looking
one-
at the clock for.
I didn't
for
realize,
Denny's-
sorry.
One last
Sorry for
thing
those last two
though,
questions.
Denny, would you be interested in revising the article based on our discussion?
What are?
I could look
The
at the Sudbury
associate.
model.
Oh, the associate, yeah.
The Sudbury model.
We
I'll
know
look at-
that Kathleen is going to work on the traffic mitigation, but not in time for this, if it's October, not in time for October. Maybe if we
No.
get it for January, we could do it for
I
that,
pulled
right?
it out, I took a look at Alex's memo to me and everybody else, so,
So
yeah.
we,
I got that.
Figured it all out?
I thought,
we didn't
why did we
expect you to
pass
be
this?
doing this one on vacation.
Which one? Why did we pass?
Why did we pass that? I don't even know. It was too confusing.
It was too long.
Because-
It was too long.
Because
way
there
too
were
long.
people
It was too long.
interested in doing something.
You know me, it's like, wait, it's more than one page? I'm out of here.
I know, 11 pages. I was like, what?
All right, so
My head hurt.
before we conclude, so just to wrap this up, Bill's going to see if we can submit 2 articles to the select board on, well, you're going to do the wetlands quick correction on the responsible party,
Right.
which are just a fix. And
All of us.
Denny,
I'll
if
pull
you-
Sudbury, I'll pull what you have, and I'll take a stab at trying to do what we discussed.
okay. And then
not a
Kathleen, would you be willing to assist
You don't have to.
Yeah,
Denny?
somebody
Yes.
to vote anyway.
No more than
Lawyer will.
2 of us, but 2 of us can?
yeah.
All right, so you have help?
Okay,
And
I'll
if-
take a stab,
Yeah,
and I'll show you where because I'll take Sudbury bylaw
yeah,
in that description.
Yeah.
I'll take what they did and what the government study committee did,
yeah,
and
Right.
just
yeah,
make it brief.
yeah.
And then if
One
we,
pager.
1 page is good.
and if we could
Less is
just
more.
all get it a couple days before the 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, that's our plan for zoning.
Yeah.
And
Move to
then
adjourn.
if it's going to be past,
Second.
if it's going to be no October, and we're going to have January, then I would like to have a further discussion about other articles at our next meeting, okay? You made a motion to adjourn, and you seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.